Picture this, you're soaring high above a dense jungle canopy, the green expanse stretching as far as the eye can see. Suddenly, a strange geometric pattern emerges from the foliage, a massive stone structure, perfectly aligned with the stars, standing silent for centuries. Who built this, why here, and what secrets does it hold? These questions have haunted explorers, archaeologists, and dreamers for generations. Today, we're embarking on an extraordinary journey to uncover some of the most baffling architectural mysteries ever left behind by ancient civilizations across the Americas. From the windswept plains of North America to the misty peaks of the Andes, our ancestors created monuments that continue to defy explanation. These aren't just piles of rocks or simple shelters, they're sophisticated feats of engineering, astronomy, and art that challenge everything we think we know about the past. Imagine standing before a pyramid that aligns with the solstice sun, or walking through a city carved into a cliff face with impossible precision. These places whisper stories of innovation, spirituality, and perhaps even contact with forces we have yet to understand. In this video, we'll explore 25 of the most bizarre and enigmatic structures ever discovered. You'll witness lost cities reclaimed by nature, temples that double as celestial calendars, and constructions so advanced they rival modern architecture. This is more than a list, it's an invitation to step into the unknown, to feel the awe and curiosity that drives us to uncover our shared human story. So settle in, open your mind, and get ready to journey through time as we reveal the ancient wonders that still leave experts scratching their heads today. Our journey begins not in some remote, untouched wilderness, but in the bustling modern city of Cholula, Mexico. Here, hidden in plain sight, lies a secret so massive it was mistaken for a natural hill for centuries. This is the Great Pyramid of Cholula, and to call it a pyramid is almost an understatement. By volume, it is the largest monument ever constructed by human hands anywhere on Earth. It's not just bigger than the Great Pyramid of Giza, it's nearly twice its volume, yet for hundreds of years its true nature was concealed, its slopes covered in soil and vegetation, with a Spanish colonial church, the Iglesia de Nuestra Señora de los Remedios, standing triumphantly at its summit. This incredible structure wasn't built in a single era by a lone visionary king. The pyramid we see today is actually a series of 6 separate pyramids, each constructed layer upon layer over the course of 1,000 years. Imagine generations upon generations of ancient builders, each new civilization adding its own chapter to this architectural epic, encasing the old structure within a new, larger shell. It's an architectural onion, with each layer representing a different epoch and a different people, from the Olmecs to the Toltecs, who all contributed to this colossal project. The sheer scale is almost impossible to grasp. The base covers nearly 45 acres, and the original height is estimated to have been over 200 feet tall. The entire complex was a central hub of spiritual and civic life, surrounded by a sprawling network of tunnels, altars, and courtyards, and those tunnels are key to its mystery. When archaeologists began excavating, they didn't just find one structure. They uncovered over 5 miles of intricate passageways snaking through the pyramid's heart, revealing elaborate murals and artifacts left behind by its builders. So why was such a monumental achievement, a project that spanned a millennium, ultimately abandoned and forgotten? Why was this center of ancient power allowed to be reclaimed by the earth and later co-opted by conquistadors? The theories are as complex as the pyramid itself. Some point to a series of catastrophic natural disasters, volcanic eruptions from the nearby Popocatépetl volcano that blanketed the area in ash and made the city uninhabitable. Others suggest a profound spiritual shift. When the Aztecs took control of the region, their focus moved to their own capital, Tenochtitlan, and the Great Pyramid of Cholula may have simply faded from prominence, its old gods slowly forgotten. Its gradual covering by earth might have even been a deliberate act, a way for a conquered people to protect their most sacred site from defilement by hiding it in plain sight, allowing it to sleep peacefully until the world was ready to rediscover its wonders. But if the story of Cholula is one of a monument hidden by nature, our next destination presents a far more deliberate act of burial, one carried out by conquerors seeking to erase a civilization's spiritual heart from memory. We travel now from the quiet hill of Cholula to the very center of modern Mexico City, where beneath the cobblestones of the Zocalo and the imposing shadow of the Metropolitan Cathedral lies the shattered yet resurgent soul of the Aztec Empire, the Templo Mayor. This was not merely a temple, it was the Axis Mundi, the absolute center of the Aztec universe. The name Templo Mayor simply means main temple, but that understates its profound significance. It was a massive, towering pyramid with two separate sanctuaries at its summit, a powerful architectural representation of the Aztec worldview. One shrine, painted in brilliant red and white, was dedicated to Huitzilopochtli, the god of sun and war. The other, adorned in blue and white, honored Tlaloc, the ancient god of rain and agriculture. This dual design was a constant physical reminder of the balance that sustained their world, the fierce, burning energy of the sun, which required the nourishment of human sacrifice to rise each day, and the life-giving, yet sometimes destructive, power of water. For the Spanish conquistadors led by Hernán Cortés, the Templo Mayor was the ultimate symbol of everything they had come to destroy. They saw its glistening, blood-stained stairs not as a place of worship, but as an abomination. In the 1500s, they systematically tore the Great Pyramid down, stone by sacred stone, and used its rubble as the foundation for their new colonial city. They built their own churches and palaces directly on top of it, confident they had silenced the old gods forever, and for over 400 years it worked. The temple faded into legend, a ghost story whispered beneath one of the world's largest cities. Its dramatic rediscovery was almost accidental. In 1978, electrical workers were digging near the cathedral when their shovels struck an enormous, elaborately carved stone disc. They had unearthed the cloaked stone, a monumental carving depicting the dismembered body of the moon goddess who, according to myth, was slain by her brother Huitzilopochtli. This one discovery ignited a massive archaeological project that continues to this day, peeling back the layers of Mexico City to reveal the Templo Mayor's buried secrets. The excavations have revealed a site of staggering complexity and somber power. Archaeologists have uncovered not one temple, but 7, each layer encapsulating an earlier version, much like Cholula, as each successive Aztec ruler sought to expand and outdo his predecessor. But the most haunting finds are the offerings. To consecrate each new building phase, thousands of objects were ritualistically deposited in precise locations around the temple. These weren't just simple valuables, they were profound spiritual statements. They found exquisite jade masks from the Maya, beautiful turquoise from the Pueblo peoples, and the skeletons of animals like jaguars and wolves, dressed in ceremonial garb and buried with precious stones. These offerings speak to the immense reach and power of the Aztec Empire, a network that demanded tribute from conquered lands and then offered their most priceless treasures back to the gods. Most chilling, however, are the recent discoveries that confirm the ancient histories. A massive circular rack of carved skulls, the Tzompantli, was unearthed, a structure where the heads of sacrificial victims were displayed. Even more recently, excavations revealed a stunning life-sized sculpture of an eagle warrior, one of the Aztecs' most elite military orders, found near the base of the temple stairs, forever guarding the approach to Huitzilopochtli's shrine. The enduring mystery of the Templo Mayor isn't just about what we find, but about the scale of what remains hidden. The Spanish chroniclers wrote of vast chambers filled with the treasure of Emperor Moctezuma, sealed by the Aztecs themselves as Cortés advanced. These rooms have never been found. The excavation is a painstaking process constrained by the modern city built directly atop it. Every new discovery forces a re-evaluation of the Aztecs, moving beyond the simplistic narrative of brutal sacrifices to reveal a complex, deeply religious society whose entire cosmos revolved around this one sacred spot, a place of both terrifying power and breathtaking artistry that refuses to stay buried. Yet if the deliberate burial of a civilization's heart in Mexico City leaves us questioning what we choose to erase, the next structure presents a mystery of an entirely different nature, one not hidden underground but sprawled invisibly across a vast, open landscape, waiting centuries for the technology that would allow humanity to finally see it. We journey now from the spiritual center of the Aztec world to the stark, arid plains of southern Peru, to one of archaeology's most enduring and visually stunning puzzles, the Nazca Lines. Imagine standing on the ground in the Nazca Desert. You see a barren, wind-swept expanse of reddish-brown pebbles surrounded by rugged hills. It feels isolated, silent, and vast. You might notice a few shallow grooves in the earth, but they seem random, meaningless. There is no hint of the spectacle that unfolds only from the sky. It wasn't until the early 20th century, with the advent of commercial flight, that the full, breathtaking scale of this artwork was revealed. From the air, the desert floor transforms into a colossal canvas. Etched into the dark surface are hundreds of precise geometric shapes, immense triangles, trapezoids, and spirals that stretch for miles, and alongside them, staggering depictions of animals and plants. There's a hummingbird with wings outstretched, a spider with perfectly proportioned legs, a monkey with an intricately coiled tail, and a whale swimming through a stone sea. These are not small drawings, they are geoglyphs on a monumental scale, some over 1,200 feet long, so large that their forms can only be comprehended from an airplane or a nearby hilltop. The creation of these lines is a testament to the ingenuity of the Nazca culture, who flourished between 200 BC and 600 CE. The method was deceptively simple, yet required incredible precision and planning. The desert floor is covered in a layer of dark, iron oxide-rich pebbles. By removing these top stones, the Nazca people exposed the lighter, sandy soil beneath. This created a color contrast that made the lines visible. The astonishing part is how they maintain the proportions and straightness of these massive figures over such great distances without any aerial view to guide them. Archaeologists believe they used a combination of simple tools and sophisticated mathematical techniques. They likely built small-scale models first, which they then transferred to the desert floor using a grid system of stakes and ropes, scaling up the design step by meticulous step. The dry, windless climate of the plateau has acted as a perfect preservative, keeping these fragile drawings intact for over 2,000 years. But the how is far easier to answer than the why. This is where the theories diverge into a fascinating spectrum of ideas, ranging from the scientific to the spiritual to the extraterrestrial. One of the earliest and most persistent theories proposed by researcher Maria Reich, who dedicated her life to studying the lines, is that they form a giant astronomical calendar. She believed the lines pointed to key celestial bodies and events on the horizon, marking solstices and equinoxes to help the Nazca people track time for agricultural and religious purposes. While some lines do align with astronomical phenomena, many others do not, making it an incomplete explanation. A more widely accepted theory today is that the lines served a profound ritualistic purpose connected to water, the most precious resource in the desert. The Nazca region is one of the driest places on Earth. Many of the geoglyphs, particularly the large trapezoids and zigzag shapes, are found to point towards sources of water in the distant mountains. Anthropologists suggest these formations were sacred pathways. Communities may have walked along them in ceremonial processions, praying to the deities for life-giving rain. The animal figures, like the hummingbird or the spider, could have been clan symbols or representations of gods believed to control water and fertility. The act of creating and walking these lines was likely a way to commune with the divine, a desperate and beautiful attempt to influence the forces that dictated their survival. Then there are the more speculative ideas. The popular notion that the lines were landing strips or signals for ancient astronauts, first proposed by Erich von Däniken, has been thoroughly debunked by archaeologists. The desert surface is too soft for any kind of aircraft, and the designs hold meaning deeply rooted in Nazca mythology and the environment they knew. A more recent and intriguing theory involves the concept of pilgrimage. Some researchers propose that the lines were not meant to be seen by gods in the sky, but to be walked by people on the ground. The experience of traversing these immense, invisible patterns may have been a form of spiritual journey, a meditative or hallucinogenic rite of passage that transformed the participants' consciousness without them ever needing to see the full picture. The true purpose of the Nazca Lines likely resides in a combination of these ideas. They were probably multifunctional, astronomical markers, sacred pathways for water rituals, and powerful spiritual symbols all at once. The ongoing debates highlight a fundamental truth about ancient wonders. They rarely conform to a single modern explanation. They are products of a world entirely different from our own, where the practical and the spiritual were seamlessly intertwined. The greatest mystery of the Nazca Lines may not be how they were built, but what they meant to the people who walked them. They are a stunning reminder that some of humanity's most magnificent achievements were not created for our admiration, but as a sacred dialogue between a culture and their gods, written on the surface of the earth itself. Leaving the vast, open canvas of the Nazca Desert, our journey now takes us high into the Andes Mountains, to the outskirts of the ancient Inca capital of Cusco. Here, perched on a steep hillside overlooking the city, sits a structure of such immense and baffling power that it seems to defy both gravity and logic. This is the fortress of Sacsayhuaman, a name that translates ominously as satisfied falcon, and its construction is a masterpiece of stonework that continues to humble modern engineers. The first sight of its walls is an experience that borders on the unreal. Imagine standing before a zigzagging barrier of limestone boulders, some towering over 20 feet high and weighing more than 200 tons. That's heavier than a fully loaded blue whale. These aren't rough, uneven rocks. They are polygonal blocks cut with such incredible precision that they fit together like an intricate, three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. The joints between these colossal stones are so tight, so seamless, that you cannot slip a single piece of paper between them, let alone a razor blade. This was all accomplished without a single drop of mortar to bind them, without the use of iron tools to shape them, and without the wheel to transport them from quarries miles away. The result is a wall that has withstood centuries of earthquakes that have toppled Spanish colonial buildings throughout Peru, its interlocking stones simply shifting slightly during a tremor before settling back into perfect alignment. The question of how the Inca achieved this is one of archaeology's greatest puzzles. Without advanced mathematics as we know it, how did they calculate the complex angles? Without hardened steel, how did they quarry, shape, and polish such gargantuan stones? The prevailing theory is a testament to their patience and ingenuity. They likely used harder stones like diorite to pound the blocks into shape, a painstaking process of pounding and grinding that could have taken generations for a single wall. To move these titans, they probably employed armies of laborers using ropes, log rollers, and earthen ramps, a logistical feat that speaks to the immense organizational power of the Inca state. Some indigenous legends even suggest the builders possessed a secret plant that could soften stone, allowing them to mold it like clay, a poetic explanation for a result that still feels like magic. But the purpose of Sacsayhuaman is just as debated as its construction. The Spanish conquistadors who encountered it intact immediately labeled it a fortress, and its strategic hilltop position with a commanding view of the valley supports that. Its three-tiered, zigzag walls create perfect zones for defenders to rain down projectiles on any attacker. Yet many archaeologists now believe its primary role was ceremonial. The complex wasn't just walls, it included towering watchtowers, labyrinthine underground chambers, and a massive circular plaza capable of holding thousands of people. For the Inca, Cusco was laid out in the shape of a puma, a sacred animal, and Sacsayhuaman represented its head. This was likely a sacred space for rituals, gatherings of the empire's elite, and a powerful symbol of Inca dominance over the spiritual and physical world. It was both a temple and a castle, a place that projected absolute authority to anyone who gazed upon it from the city below. This leads to the final, haunting mystery of Sacsayhuaman, its rapid and violent abandonment. For decades, it was a center of Inca power and resistance. During the Great Rebellion of Manco Inca in 1536, indigenous forces used the fortress as a stronghold to lay siege to the Spanish who had occupied Cusco. The siege was ultimately broken, and the victorious Spanish, determined to break the spirit of the Inca and erase their symbols of power, systematically began to dismantle the complex. They tore down the great towers and pried apart the walls to use the perfectly cut stones as building material for their own cathedrals and mansions in the city below. Today, only the deepest, most massive foundation stones remain, a haunting skeleton of what was once one of the most formidable structures in the Americas. Walking among these fallen giants, you are left with a profound sense of awe for the builders and a sobering reminder of the conquerors who sought to erase them, leaving behind a puzzle in stone that we are still struggling to solve. Just as the shattered stones of Sacsayhuaman speak of imperial power and conquest, our next destination reveals a city that was an imperial capital in its own right, founded not for defense but for dominance. We travel now from the high Andes to the cloud-swept mountains of southern Mexico, to a place where an entire mountaintop was sheared off to create a stage for one of Mesoamerica's earliest and most influential civilizations. This is Monte Albán, the magnificent center of the Zapotec world. The sheer audacity of its location is the first thing that strikes you. The city isn't just built on a mountain, the mountain was fundamentally altered to accommodate it. The Zapotecs, beginning around 500 BCE, literally leveled the top of a 400-meter-high ridge, creating a vast, artificial plateau sprawling across more than 15 square miles. Imagine the collective effort, the generations of labor required to move millions of tons of earth and stone without beasts of burden or metal tools, all to create a blank slate from which to proclaim their power to the entire Oaxaca Valley below. From this breathtaking acropolis, the rulers of Monte Albán could survey all the land and trade routes for miles in every direction, a constant, visible reminder of their authority to every village and rival kingdom. At its heart lay the Grand Plaza, a sprawling ceremonial precinct that feels like an ancient Mesoamerican version of a Capitol Mall or a modern city center. It's a vast, rectangular space flanked by massive pyramidal platforms, sunken ball courts, and a labyrinth of elite residences and administrative buildings. The north and south platforms, acting as giant bookends to the plaza, were likely the stages for grand public rituals and the dwellings of the city's powerful priest-kings. But one of the most fascinating structures is the observatory known as Building J. Its unique arrowhead-shaped design is radically different from every other building in the plaza, and its walls are aligned with key astronomical events, particularly the zenith passage of the sun, which was critically important for the agricultural calendar. This architectural outlier has even led to speculation that it might have been a military structure, a sort of map room for conquests, as carvings on its walls seem to list vanquished towns. Yet, for all its imposing architecture, the most enduring mystery of Monte Albán isn't a building at all, but a gallery of stone figures that has perplexed archaeologists for over a century, the danzantes or the dancers. Carved into large stone slabs, these figures are unlike any other art in Mesoamerica. They are depicted in twisted, contorted poses, their mouths often slack and their eyes closed. Their bodies are rendered with a startling anatomical detail, with some figures appearing to display evidence of genital mutilation or even depictions of entrails. The old theory which gave them their name was that they represented dancers in some ecstatic ritual. However, the grim reality is far darker and more widely accepted today. Most scholars now believe the dansantes are graphic depictions of tortured prisoners of war, likely rulers or nobles captured from rival city-states. They are victory monuments, a brutal and public record of the Zapotec's military prowess designed to terrorize visitors and subjugated peoples. They represent one of the earliest examples of explicit political propaganda in the Americas, a stone-carved testament to the price of defiance. For over 1,000 years, Monte Albán thrived as a political, economic, and religious powerhouse, influencing cultures across the region. Its decline, beginning around 700 CE, is as complex as its rise. It wasn't a sudden, violent collapse like so many other cities, but a gradual process of decentralization. The most compelling theory points to internal strife. The very elite class that built the city may have become too powerful, their demands for tribute and labor too heavy a burden on the common people and outlying communities. This could have led to unrest, a breakdown in the social order, and a loss of faith in the rulers who lived in their palatial complexes on the mountaintop. Eventually, people simply began to leave, migrating to smaller, more manageable towns in the valley below. The great capital was slowly abandoned, not to invaders, but to the elements and to silence, its grand plaza becoming a ghostly stage where the wind whispers through the ruins of a once unshakable empire. From the ordered stone terraces of Monte Albán, we now travel far to the north, crossing deserts and rivers to the very heart of what is now the United States. Here, nestled along the Mississippi River near modern-day St. Louis, lies a testament to a forgotten American metropolis that once rivaled any European city of its time. This is Cahokia, the largest pre-Columbian settlement north of Mexico, a sprawling city of earth and wood that was home to tens of thousands of people and dominated the region for centuries. The scale of Cahokia is almost incomprehensible. At its peak around 1100 AD, the city covered nearly 6 square miles and boasted a population that some estimates place as high as 20,000 people, a number that would not be surpassed by any city in the United States until the late 1700s. The skyline of this ancient urban center was not defined by glass and steel, but by earth and sky. Over 120 earthen mounds dotted the landscape, serving as platforms for temples, elite residences, and burial sites. The sheer volume of soil moved by hand, basket by basket, to create these structures represents one of the greatest engineering feats of the ancient world. Towering above them all is the colossal Monk's Mound, the largest prehistoric earthen structure in the entire Americas. This flat-topped pyramid rises 100 feet into the air and covers a base of 14 acres larger at its base than the Great Pyramid of Giza. The construction was not a single event, but a project that unfolded over decades, even centuries, with at least 14 distinct phases of building. Each new layer was a careful addition of soil packed down and stabilized by countless workers. The summit, which required climbing a grand staircase of wooden steps, would have held a massive temple or the residence of a powerful ruler, visible from every corner of the city and the surrounding countryside, a constant physical manifestation of the central authority that organized this vast society. But Cahokia was more than just a city of mounds. It was a place of profound astronomical and spiritual significance. To the west of Monk's Mound, archaeologists discovered the remains of a sophisticated solar calendar, now known as Woodhenge. This structure consisted of a large circle of massive cedar posts, which could be used to track the movements of the sun with incredible precision. On the equinoxes and solstices, a priest or astronomer standing at the center of the circle would see the sun rise directly in line with key posts. This knowledge wasn't just for tracking time. It was essential for coordinating the agricultural cycle that fed the massive population and for scheduling the city's great ceremonies, which would have drawn people from across the region. The society that built and sustained Cahokia was incredibly complex and hierarchical. It was a chiefdom, likely led by a powerful ruler who wielded both political and religious authority. This ruler would have resided atop Monk's Mound, literally and figuratively above everyone else. Artisans in the city crafted exquisite goods from materials brought through an extensive trade network that stretched from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. Copper from Lake Superior, seashells from the Florida coast, and mica from the Appalachian Mountains. This flow of luxury goods helped reinforce the status of the elite. The discovery of elaborate burial sites, such as one where a high-status man was laid to rest on a bed of 20,000 shell beads alongside sacrificed retainers, points to a society with stark social divisions and a belief system that justified them. Then, around the 1300s, this great city was abandoned. The bustling plazas fell silent, the great mounds were left to the elements, and the complex social order that held it all together simply vanished. The mystery of Cahokia's collapse is one of North America's greatest archaeological puzzles. There was no evidence of a massive invasion or a single catastrophic event. Instead, the decline appears to have been a gradual unraveling, likely caused by a perfect storm of environmental and social pressures. One leading theory points to climate change. Tree ring data suggests a series of prolonged droughts in the 13th century would have devastated the corn-based agriculture that supported the dense population. Another theory suggests that deforestation from constant building and fuel needs led to catastrophic flooding from the nearby Mississippi, wiping out crops and homes. Beyond environmental factors, the very structure of Cahokian society may have sown the seeds of its own destruction. The immense labor required to build and maintain the mounds, controlled by a small elite class, could have led to social unrest among the common people. Combined with food shortages from drought or flood, this could have sparked a revolution or a mass exodus, as people lost faith in their leaders' ability to appease the gods and provide stability. The people of Cahokia did not disappear. They likely migrated away to form smaller, more sustainable communities, leaving their magnificent city as a haunting reminder of how even the most powerful and sophisticated civilizations are ultimately fragile, bound to the land and the climate that sustains them. Leaving the earthen pyramids of Cahokia behind, we now venture deep into the humid, emerald heart of the Guatemalan rainforest. Here, the very air seems thick with history, and the silence is broken only by the calls of howler monkeys and the rustle of leaves. It is in this secluded world that we encounter one of the most iconic and awe-inspiring sights of the ancient Americas, the soaring stone temples of Tikal. These structures are not merely ruins, they are petrified giants reaching triumphantly for the sky above the jungle canopy, silent sentinels of a civilization that mastered astronomy, architecture, and art. Tikal was one of the most powerful kingdoms of the ancient Maya, a city-state that dominated the political and military landscape of the region for centuries. At its peak during the Classic period, around 200 to 900 AD, it was a bustling metropolis, home to an estimated 100,000 people. The city center was a sacred precinct of breathtaking scale, featuring grand plazas, royal palaces, ball courts, and of course, its legendary pyramids. These pyramids, known as temples, were far more than just tombs or places of worship. They were literally bridges between the earthly realm and the heavens above. Each was crowned with an elaborate roof comb, a towering stone latticework that would have been painted in bright colors and made the structure appear even more immense against the horizon, a deliberate and dazzling display of a king's divine power and connection to the gods. The undisputed king of this stone forest is Temple Roman IV, the tallest pre-Columbian structure in the entire Americas. built around 741 AD to honor the King Yikin-chan Kayawil. It rises an astonishing 230 feet from the jungle floor. To stand at its base is to feel dwarfed not just by its size but by the sheer ambition it represents. The climb to its summit is a journey in itself, a steep ascent up wooden ladders fastened to the ancient stone steps. The reward is one of the most breathtaking views on the planet, a seemingly endless sea of green jungle canopy stretching to the horizon, punctuated only by the towering roof combs of Tikal's other great temples. It's a vista that hasn't changed much in over 1,000 years, and it's easy to imagine a Maya priest king standing in this very spot, believing himself at the center of the universe, closer to the gods than any other mortal. Beyond their visual grandeur, these temples were sophisticated instruments of science and sensory experience. The Maya were brilliant astronomers, and the alignment of their temples allowed them to track the complex movements of the sun, moon, and planets with remarkable accuracy. This knowledge was essential for their precise calendar system, which dictated the timing of agricultural cycles, religious ceremonies, and royal coronations. But perhaps one of the most intriguing mysteries of Tikal involves sound, not sight. The acoustics around the Grand Plaza and between the temples are strangely amplified. A hand clap at the base of one temple can be heard clearly at the base of another, hundreds of feet away. Some researchers suggest this was no accident. The plazas, surrounded by steep stepped pyramids, may have acted as natural amplifiers during public rituals. The voice of a king or a priest, chanting or making a proclamation, could have been projected across the entire gathered populace, making his words seem to carry the supernatural power of the gods themselves, a clever manipulation of architecture to reinforce divine authority. This makes the city's eventual fate all the more poignant. Unlike Cahokia's gradual decline, the collapse of the Maya Classic period civilization was a catastrophic event that swept across the region. By the end of the 9th century, the great cities of the southern lowlands, including Tikal, were being abandoned. The stelae, the stone monuments that recorded the histories and calendars of the kings, stopped being carved. The palaces emptied, the grand plazas fell silent. The jungle, which had been held at bay for centuries by countless laborers, began its slow, inexorable reconquest, swallowing the stone giants in vines and roots. The reasons for this collapse are still fiercely debated, and it was likely a combination of factors that proved fatal. A series of severe, prolonged droughts would have devastated the maize-dependent population and strained the city's intricate reservoir system. Decades of intense warfare between rival city-states like Tikal and Calakmul drained resources and destabilized the region. There is also evidence of deep social unrest. The immense labor and resources demanded to build these temples for a small elite class may have finally led the common people to lose faith in their rulers, especially when those rulers could no longer reliably bring rain or victory. The people of Tikal didn't vanish. They simply walked away from their magnificent city, migrating to other areas and leaving their towering achievements to the elements. For centuries, Tikal slept, its secrets guarded by the jungle, until explorers and archaeologists began to peel back the layers of green, revealing a lost world of genius and ambition that continues to captivate us today. Yet if the stone citadels of Tikal represent a civilization ultimately conquered by nature, our next destination showcases a culture that forged its empire in one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth, only to have its greatest achievement prove tragically vulnerable to the very climate it mastered. We journey now from the Guatemalan rainforest to the stark northern coast of Peru, where the vast, sun-baked desert meets the Pacific Ocean. Here, rising from the sands like a mirage, are the immense earthen walls of Chan Chan, the legendary capital of the Chimu Empire and the largest adobe city ever built in the pre-Columbian Americas. The scale of Chan Chan is almost beyond belief. At its zenith in the 15th century, before the Inca conquest, this was not just a town or a ceremonial center. It was a sprawling metropolitan complex covering nearly 8 square miles, a labyrinth of walls, streets, and compounds that was home to an estimated 60,000 people. Unlike the stonemasons of the Inca or the Maya, the builders of Chan Chan worked with the earth beneath their feet. They constructed their entire world from adobe, sun-dried mud bricks. This was a practical choice in a rainless desert, but it also required an almost unimaginable output of labor. The city's perimeter walls alone, some towering 30 feet high, required an estimated 50 to 60 million individual bricks. The entire city is a monument to organized human effort, a testament to what can be achieved with simple materials and immense communal will. The heart of Chan Chan was not a single palace or temple, but a series of 10 immense walled compounds known as ciudadelas or citadels. These were not military fortresses, but the lavish royal precincts for the Chimu kings. Each time a ruler died, according to prevailing theories, his successor would not inherit the old palace. Instead, he would commission the construction of an entirely new ciudadela, a self-contained city within a city that would serve as his home, administrative center, and eventual tomb. Walking through the ruins of the Tishudi complex, the one partially restored ciudadela, you pass through a series of narrow, maze-like corridors that suddenly open up into vast plazas, storage courtyards, and ceremonial rooms. This intricate design was likely intentional, controlling the flow of people and creating a sense of disorientation and awe for any visitor granted an audience with the divine king. The true artistic glory of Chan Chan, however, is not in its scale but in its stunning details. The vast blank walls of these compounds were never meant to be plain. They were adorned with exquisite bas-relief sculptures, intricate patterns carved directly into the damp clay before it hardened. These are not random decorations, they are a beautiful and sophisticated visual language. The most common motifs are a mesmerizing array of marine life, stylized fish, squids, pelicans, and waves, a constant homage to the Pacific Ocean, the source of the Chimu's wealth and sustenance. Other walls feature complex geometric patterns and repeating designs of small, stooped figures that some archaeologists interpret as representations of the workers who built this magnificent city. These carvings transformed plain earthen walls into immense canvases that celebrated the natural world and the society that thrived within it. This vast city and the empire it commanded could not have existed without a technological marvel that stands as one of the Chimu's greatest innovations, an incredibly advanced and extensive hydraulic system. The rivers flowing from the Andes to the coast are seasonal, and the Chimu heartland was a desert. To support their massive population and intensive agriculture, they became master water engineers. They constructed over 80 miles of subterranean canals to tap into the groundwater, along with intricate networks of surface aqueducts and reservoirs. This system allowed them to transform barren desert into verdant farmland, cultivating maize, beans, and squash to feed their people and cotton for the exquisite textiles that were a cornerstone of their economy and trade. Their ability to harness and control water was the very foundation of their power. Yet, this brilliant adaptation to their environment also contained the seeds of their vulnerability. Their entire civilization was built around a precise and predictable climate pattern. The great enemy of adobe is not heat but water. The walls of Chan Chan were designed to stand for millennia under the harsh, dry sun of the Peruvian coast. But they were utterly defenseless against a true deluge. This is the profound irony and tragedy of Chan Chan. The very phenomenon that powered the ocean life they celebrated, El Niño, would also be their undoing. Periodically, this climatic event would disrupt the ocean currents, bringing torrential rains and catastrophic flooding to this normally arid region. Archaeological evidence shows that Chan Chan was hit by several significant El Niño events during its history. Each time, the city would have been devastated, its intricate friezes melted away, its walls eroded, its reservoirs and canals choked with silt. Each time, the resilient Chimu would have undertaken the back-breaking task of rebuilding, patching the walls and dredging the canals, their belief in their king's power perhaps shaken but not yet broken. Their fate, however, was ultimately sealed not by nature but by a rival empire. In the late 15th century, perhaps while Chan Chan was still recovering from a climatic disaster, the expanding Inca Empire under the leadership of the great conqueror Tupac Yupanqui set its sights on the wealthy Chimu kingdom. The Inca army marched north, and despite the Chimu's formidable defenses and reputed wealth, their conquest was surprisingly swift, likely taking less than a year. The reasons for this rapid fall are still debated. The Chimu may have been weakened internally by the demands of their elite class or the recent environmental stresses of an El Niño. The Inca, masters of psychological warfare as well as military strategy, may have cut off Chan Chan's water supply by seizing control of the upstream canals in the mountains, literally holding the lifeblood of the city hostage. However it happened, the Chimu king was captured and taken to Cusco, and his magnificent adobe capital was absorbed into the Inca Empire. For a brief time, Chan Chan served as an important provincial Inca center. But its destiny as a great capital was over. When the Spanish arrived decades later, they found a city already in significant decline. Its grandeur faded and its population greatly diminished. They wrote of looting immense quantities of gold and silver from the royal tombs within the ciudadlas, a final pillaging of a city that had already endured the wrath of both nature and man. Today, Chan Chan stands as a hauntingly beautiful ruin, a city of earth returning to earth. Its vulnerability is its lesson, a powerful reminder that even the most advanced and adaptable civilizations are inextricably linked to the climate they depend on, and that the greatest works of humankind, whether of stone or mud, are ultimately fragile in the face of a changing world. Leaving the sun-bleached adobe of Chan Chan far behind, we now travel back to the high plateau of central Mexico, to a city so vast, so meticulously planned, and so utterly enigmatic that its very name was given to it by those who arrived centuries after its fall, believing it must have been built by gods. This is Teotihuacan, the city of the gods, and its breathtaking centerpiece is the Avenue of the Dead, a thoroughfare designed to inspire awe and channel the very forces of the cosmos. Walking down this central artery today is an experience that defies time. The avenue is massive, stretching for over 2 miles, and it runs with a precision that feels almost modern. It's flanked on both sides by the crumbled platforms of what were once lavish residential compounds, temples, and palaces, their faded grandeur hinting at the immense crowds that once filled this space. Your gaze is immediately drawn forward, pulled along the avenue's trajectory toward 2 colossal peaks that dominate the horizon. To your north, the majestic Pyramid of the Moon, its form echoing the shape of the sacred mountain Cerro Gordo behind it. And to your east, the sheer, overwhelming bulk of the Pyramid of the Sun, the 3rd largest pyramid in the world. This was not a haphazard collection of buildings. It was a meticulously engineered sacred landscape, a map of the universe rendered in stone and mortar. The first and most profound mystery of Teotihuacan is the identity of its architects. Unlike the Maya with their carved kings' names or the Inca with their oral histories, the people of Teotihuacan remain silent and anonymous. They built a metropolis that, at its peak around 450 AD, housed over 125,000 people, making it one of the largest cities on Earth at the time, yet they left behind no written records, no royal stelae, no glorifying histories of their rulers. The art that has been discovered is curiously impersonal, focusing on nature deities and abstract spiritual concepts rather than deified individuals. This has led to a fascinating and enduring debate. Was Teotihuacan ruled by a single all-powerful king like other contemporary cultures, or was it governed by a collective council, a unique form of oligarchy where power was shared among different lineages? The absence of a single lavish royal palace, replaced instead by many large, well-appointed compounds, suggests the latter. We know they were master artisans, traders, and obsidian workers whose influence stretched across Mesoamerica, but their name for themselves and the language they spoke are secrets they took with them. Their anonymity makes their astronomical genius all the more astounding. The entire city is a giant celestial observatory. The layout of the Avenue of the Dead is not arbitrary. It is aligned 15.5 degrees east of true north. For decades, researchers puzzled over this specific orientation. The breakthrough came when it was discovered that this alignment corresponds to the sunset on two key dates, August 12th and April 29th. These dates are significant because they bracket the 260-day cycle of the Mesoamerican ritual calendar. But there's more. This same axis also points directly to the heliacal setting of the Pleiades star cluster, an event of great importance to cultures across the Americas. Furthermore, from the summit of the Pyramid of the Sun, an observer would witness the sun set directly over the peak of the Cerro Gordo mountain on the day it passed directly overhead, a key solar event. This wasn't just city planning, it was a form of geo-astronomical magic, anchoring their belief system into the very bedrock and sky above them. This deep connection to the cosmos, however, had a dark and terrifying underside. At the heart of the city, just off the Avenue of the Dead, lies the Ciudadela, a vast sunken plaza. At its center stands the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, known to the Aztecs as Quetzalcoatl. This pyramid is adorned with breathtaking, intricate carvings of the feathered serpent deity, alternating with a fearsome, goggle-eyed figure believed to represent a storm or war god. In the 1980s, archaeologists made a chilling discovery that brought the true nature of Teotihuacan's power into sharp, horrifying focus. They uncovered mass graves within the temple, the remains of over 200 individuals, all who had been ritually sacrificed. This was not a random act of violence. The victims, mostly young men, were found in groups, their hands tied behind their backs. They were accompanied by an array of grave goods that revealed the military might of Teotihuacan. They were dressed as warriors, but not just any warriors. Some were adorned with necklaces of human jawbones, others with elaborate collars made from shell imitations of human teeth. The most startling discovery was that many of these sacrificed individuals were not from Teotihuacan itself. Isotopic analysis of their teeth and bones showed they were foreigners, likely captured warriors from rival cities or acquired through tribute. This evidence paints a picture of a city that used its immense spiritual authority to justify brutal military expansion. The mass sacrifice was a terrifying public spectacle, a demonstration of power meant to shock allies and subdue enemies, cementing Teotihuacan's dominance not just through trade and influence, but through sheer calculated terror. The story of Teotihuacan's end is as mysterious as its beginning. Around 750 AD, the city experienced a catastrophic event. Its major structures along the Avenue of the Dead were systematically burned and desecrated. The destruction was focused and furious, targeting the temples and palaces of the elite. For a long time, historians suspected an invasion by a foreign army. However, the lack of evidence for a new, distinct culture moving in has led to a more compelling and tragic theory, a violent internal revolution. The common people, perhaps burdened by the demands of the elite class or enraged by the repressive, militaristic ideology evidenced by the mass sacrifices, may have risen up and torn their own city apart. They overthrew the old order, shattered the system, and then simply walked away, abandoning the city of the gods to the elements and leaving behind a legacy of sublime beauty and profound, unanswered questions. Leaving the ordered cosmic grid of Teotihuacan, we now venture high into the cloud-shrouded peaks of the Peruvian Andes, to a place where the very stones were designed to disorient, terrify, and transform human consciousness. This is Chavín de Huántar, less a city and more an architectural instrument of psychological warfare. a ceremonial center so advanced in its manipulation of sound and space that it remains one of the most brilliantly terrifying structures of the ancient world. Approaching Chavín around 900 BCE, a pilgrim would have felt a growing sense of awe and dread. The complex was built at the strategic confluence of two rivers, but its true power was hidden from view. The exterior was imposing, with finely cut stone walls and a large sunken circular plaza. Yet the heart of its mystery lay deep underground, in a dark, bewildering network of narrow passages and chambers known as the galleries. This was not a basement or a storage area. It was a carefully engineered labyrinth, a ritual pathway designed to completely separate a visitor from the rational, familiar world above. To enter was to surrender your senses to the will of the priesthood, who used this architectural masterpiece to orchestrate profound spiritual experiences. The most unnerving feature of this subterranean world is its acoustics. Modern archaeological research has revealed that the tunnels were designed with specific sonic properties in mind. A conch shell trumpet, known as a pututu, blown in certain courtyards, would have its sound channeled and distorted through the ventilation shafts and galleries, emerging as a disembodied, unearthly roar that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The rumble of water from the nearby rivers, diverted to flow through specially built canals underneath the temple, would create a constant, low-frequency vibration that could be felt more than heard, agitating the very bones of those inside. For a pilgrim disoriented in the pitch-black, cramped passages, these sounds would have been terrifyingly supernatural, the undeniable voice of a powerful deity shaking the temple from within. To further dismantle a visitor's grip on reality, the priesthood employed a powerful combination of sensory deprivation and psychoactive stimulation. The galleries are dark, cramped, and confusing, inducing a state of anxiety and vulnerability. Once a participant was in this heightened state, the priests would likely administer a potent hallucinogenic brew. Archaeologists have found evidence of the San Pedro cactus, a mescaline-containing plant, and the vilca tree, whose seeds are a powerful source of DMT, both depicted in the art at Chavín and found in the surrounding region. The combination of darkness, terrifying acoustics, and powerful psychoactive substances would have propelled participants into a profound visionary state, making them utterly susceptible to the staged revelations that awaited them. The ultimate destination of this harrowing journey was the spiritual core of the entire complex, the lanzon. This is not a grand statue in an open chamber, but a weapon of spiritual shock. The lanzon is a 15-foot-tall blade of carved white granite, shaped like a giant sculptural dagger that has been driven directly into the center of the temple's foundation. It is housed in a small, cross-shaped chamber deep in the most restricted part of the labyrinth, accessible only by a single narrow staircase. The chamber is designed so that a person could only ever see one section of the monolith at a time, never its entirety. The carving itself is a masterpiece of composite terror, a figure with a humanoid body, clawed hands and feet, snarling feline fangs, and eyebrows that transform into serpents. To a pilgrim emerging from a dark tunnel, terrified and under the influence of powerful entheogens, the sudden sight of this monstrous, part human, part animal deity glowing in the flickering light of a priest's torch would have been a truly apocalyptic vision, a face-to-face encounter with the divine that was both terrifying and transformative. The genius of Chavín de Huántar was its role as the first unifying cultural force in the Andes. Its influence did not spread through military conquest, but through ideological export. Pilgrims from distant villages would make the arduous journey to this center of spiritual power. They would undergo this orchestrated, life-altering experience, and then return to their homes as living proof of the Chavín cult's connection to the gods. They carried with them the distinctive art style, the complex iconography of felines, raptors, and snakes, and the shared religious concepts which were adopted by emerging cultures across Peru. Chavín became a kind of mother culture, not by building an empire, but by inventing a shared religious language and demonstrating a terrifying, unforgettable form of ritual power that would echo through Andean civilization for centuries to come. Descending from the psychological labyrinth of Chavín, we find ourselves in a city that represents the intellectual and artistic zenith of Maya civilization. Nestled in the lush, misty foothills of the Chiapas highlands, Palenque is not the largest Maya site, but it is often considered the most beautiful, a place where exquisite artistry and deep astronomical knowledge converge. The heart of this royal city is its palace, a sprawling complex of courtyards, galleries, and subterranean passages that grew organically over centuries. But rising from its center is a structure so unique in the Maya world it instantly captures the imagination, the four-story tower. This square, pagoda-like tower is an architectural anomaly. Unlike the steep, monolithic pyramids dedicated to temples and tombs, the Tower of the Palace feels observational, almost modern in its conception. While its exact purpose remains debated, the prevailing theory, supported by its strategic positioning and specific window alignments, is that it served as an astronomical observatory. From its upper chambers, Maya priest astronomers could have tracked the precise path of the sun across the sky, the movements of Venus, a planet of supreme importance in Maya cosmology, and the journey of the moon. This wasn't mere stargazing, it was a sacred science. Their precise celestial calculations were the foundation of their elaborate calendar systems, which dictated the timing of agricultural cycles, religious ceremonies, and the coronations of kings. The tower stands as a powerful testament to the Mayas' desire to understand and codify the mechanics of the universe, believing that the order of the heavens directly governed the fate of their kingdom. The walls of Palenque's buildings serve as a stone library, chronicling the history of its divine rulers through intricate bas-relief carvings and stucco sculptures. Where Teotihuacan was anonymous, Palenque is profoundly personal. We know the names, family lineages, and great deeds of its kings and queens because they commissioned elaborate artworks to ensure their stories would endure. Walking through the palace's courtyards, you are surrounded by portraits of rulers like Kayinish Janob Pakal I, or Pakal the Great, and his son Kayinish Kanbialam Roman II. They are depicted in elaborate regalia, receiving the symbols of power from their ancestors or triumphing over captives in battle. These artworks were not just decoration, they were potent political propaganda designed to legitimize their rule by demonstrating their connection to the gods and their prowess as military leaders. The most astounding discovery at Palenque, and one of the greatest archaeological finds of the 20th century, lies deep beneath the Temple of the Inscriptions. For centuries, the Grand Pyramid had intrigued explorers, noting that the interior of its summit temple was paved with unusually large, seemingly movable stone floors. In 1952, after 4 years of meticulous excavation, Mexican archaeologist Alberto Rozlulia made a breathtaking breakthrough. He discovered a hidden staircase deliberately filled with rubble, descending deep into the heart of the pyramid. At the bottom, after clearing a secret doorway guarded by the skeletons of 5 sacrificed youths, he entered a chamber that had been sealed for over 1,000 years. Inside was the crypt of Pakal the Great, who ruled Palenque for 68 years and oversaw its golden age. The sight was overwhelming. The vaulted chamber was filled with exquisite jade ornaments, pearls, and ceramic vessels offerings for the king's journey to the underworld. The walls were adorned with stucco reliefs of the 9 lords of the night, the deities of the Maya underworld, and at the center rested an enormous, intricately carved stone sarcophagus. Lifting its 5-ton lid revealed the skeleton of Pakal himself, his face covered by a magnificent mosaic jade death mask, his body adorned with jade jewelry in every finger. The grandeur of the tomb was unprecedented in the Maya world and confirmed that these pyramids were not just temples but also monumental tombs for god kings. It is the sarcophagus lid itself, a single massive stone slab covered in a complex iconographic narrative that has sparked one of the most enduring controversies in archaeology. The mainstream interpretation, accepted by most scholars, views the scene as a powerful depiction of Pakal's death and rebirth. At the moment of his death, he is shown falling down the world tree, the sacred axis that connects the underworld, the earthly realm, and the heavens. He descends into the gaping jaws of the Maya underworld, symbolized by a skeletal monster. But this is not an end, it is a transformation. From his body emerges the same world tree, now bearing fruit and flowering, signifying his resurrection and apotheosis into a divine state. He is being reborn as the maize god, ensuring the continuation of life and the cycle of the seasons for his people. The alternative interpretation, famously put forward by author Erich von Däniken in his book Chariots of the Gods, sees something entirely different. In this view, Pakal is not a dying king but an ancient astronaut. He is seated in a crouched position within a complicated, mechanical-looking device, a cockpit. His hands are manipulating controls, his foot is on a pedal, and he is even wearing a breathing apparatus. The tree beneath him is reinterpreted as the fiery exhaust of a rocket ship, with the jaws of the underworld symbolizing the vastness of space. This spaceship theory, while thoroughly debunked by epigraphers and archaeologists who understand the rich symbolism of Maya art, captured the public's imagination and remains a popular staple of ancient astronaut theories. It highlights a fascinating cultural phenomenon. When faced with an advanced ancient civilization whose symbolic language we are still learning to fully decipher, it is sometimes easier to attribute their achievements to extraterrestrials than to accept the profound depth of their own indigenous genius and spiritual worldview. The true meaning of the lid is likely even more profound than a spaceship. It is a map of a spiritual journey, a beautiful and complex metaphor for death, rebirth, and eternal life that lay at the very core of Maya belief. From the intimate, carved mythology of Pakal's tomb, we now journey south, high onto the arid, wind-swelt Altiplano of Bolivia. Here, at an altitude that steals the breath, stand the silent ruins of Tiwanaku, the capital of a powerful pre-Inca civilization that flourished over 1,000 years ago. And among its scattered monoliths and crumbling temples, one artifact stands apart, not for its size but for its profound and enigmatic presence, the Gate of the Sun. Carved from a single, massive block of andesite granite weighing an estimated 10 tons, the gate is a masterpiece of artistry and precision. It now stands upright, reassembled from a single crack that split it long ago, but its current location is almost certainly not its original home. Many archaeologists believe it was once the central feature of a much larger building, perhaps a temple that has since completely vanished, its stones carted away over the centuries for use in other constructions. The gate itself is a stunningly intric Chinese letter. Dominating the top of the arch is a central, imposing figure, often called the staff god, for the ornate staffs or scepters he holds in each hand. His face is square and stern, with tears streaming from his eyes, and his head is surrounded by a radiant crown of 24 rays, each ending in either a human head or a puma's head. Flanking this central deity are 3 rows of 8 figures, each 48-winged, kneeling attendants who appear to be running toward the central god in a posture of reverence or subservience. The immediate and most enduring question is, what does it all mean? The most prominent theory suggests the gate was a sophisticated calendar. The central figure, with its 24 rays, could represent the 24 hours of the day. The 32 winged figures on the sides, when added to the 16 in the middle row, total 48. Some researchers have tried to link these numbers to lunar cycles or the length of a solar year, but the math is not perfectly clear. This has led others to propose it represents a much longer, multi-year calendrical cycle. Another compelling interpretation is that the scene is not a calendar at all, but a powerful creation myth. The central deity could be Viracocha, the great creator god in the Andean pantheon, and the smaller figures could represent the different ethnic groups he is calling into being or the different celestial beings that serve him. The tears on his face could symbolize life-giving rain, a precious commodity on the dry altiplano. The mystery deepens when we consider its original purpose. If it was the entrance to a temple, what kind of rituals required passage through this specific portal? The alignment of the gate is crucial. On the mornings of the equinoxes, the rising sun would have shone directly through the gateway, illuminating the central deity in a dramatic burst of light. This suggests it was a vital component in a much larger astronomical and ceremonial complex, a stone instrument designed to capture the first, transformative rays of the sun on the 2 days of the year when day and night are in perfect balance. Passing through this gate during such an event would have been a profound spiritual experience, a symbolic journey from one state of being to another, mediated by the sun and the stone. Beyond the symbolic meaning of the carvings lies the equally baffling question of its construction. The precision of the stone cutting is extraordinary. The andesite stone is incredibly hard, yet the artisans carved deeply into its surface with flawless, sharp-edged lines and perfect symmetry. How did they achieve this without iron tools? They likely used a combination of stone hammers, bronze chisels, and an immense amount of patient, skilled labor, slowly abrading the surface with sand and water. The true puzzle, however, is transport. The nearest source for andesite of this quality is over 60 miles away across Lake Titicaca and up to this high plateau. The Tiwanaku people had no wheeled vehicles and no draft animals. The prevailing theory is that they used a combination of log rollers, rope, and the sheer muscle power of hundreds of laborers to move this titanic block, a feat of logistics and communal effort that speaks volumes about the organizational power of their society. This organizational power is the final key to understanding the gate's significance. Tiwanaku was not an isolated shrine. It was the heart of a vast state that dominated the southern Andes for centuries. Its influence stretched from the Pacific coast of Chile to the jungles of eastern Bolivia. The gate and the city itself was a pilgrimage center, a place that drew people from across this vast territory. The imagery on the gate, therefore, was not just local art, it was a powerful piece of state propaganda. It presented a unified cosmology, a story of creation and order emanating from Tiwanaku and its priesthood. For a pilgrim from a distant valley witnessing this immense, intricately carved portal and participating in the ceremonies that centered on it would have been an awe-inspiring experience, reinforcing the spiritual and political authority of the Tiwanaku state and binding a diverse empire together with a shared set of beliefs carved in stone. The Gate of the Sun was far more than an archway. It was the ideological cornerstone of an empire, a frozen piece of ritual that continues to challenge our understanding of the ancient Andes. From the high, windswept plains of Tiwanaku, we now travel back north, deep into the humid, swampy lowlands of the Mexican Gulf Coast. Here, in a landscape of rivers and dense jungle, a civilization emerged so early and so influential that it is considered the cultural wellspring for all that followed in Mesoamerica. This was the realm of the Olmec, and their most enduring and baffling legacy is not a city or a temple, but a collection of stone faces, immense, stoic, and carved with a power that has captivated the world. These are the famous colossal heads of La Venta, and they stand as silent, enigmatic sentinels of a culture that pioneered the artistic and spiritual traditions of an entire continent. The first sight of one of these heads is an experience that defies expectation. Imagine a single block of basalt volcanic rock standing over 9 feet tall and weighing as much as 40 tons. That's the equivalent of 2 full-grown African elephants. The face is uniquely naturalistic, with broad, flat features, wide noses, and full lips, often set in an expression of serene yet unmistakable authority. Each head is adorned with a close-fitting helmet, each one uniquely decorated, suggesting these were not generic portraits but carefully individualized representations. Carved with incredible skill using only stone tools, these heads display a mastery of three-dimensional sculpture that would not be seen again in the region for centuries. They are not merely artworks, they are monuments of raw, concentrated power, designed to inspire awe and command respect for the individuals they immortalized. The identity of these stern-faced figures is one of archaeology's most compelling puzzles. The prevailing theory, supported by the sheer cost and effort required to create them, is that they depict powerful Olmec rulers. The individualized helmets could represent the specific headgear worn during the Mesoamerican bowl game, a ritual sport that was deeply intertwined with themes of rulership, warfare, and mythology. Another, more speculative theory suggests they might represent deified ancestors or even legendary ball players, revered for their prowess and heroism. What is undeniable is their purpose. These were colossal proclamations of power. Erected in the central plazas of Olmec centers like La Venta and San Lorenzo, they would have been constant, visible reminders of the ruler's authority to every citizen and visitor, a stone declaration of their right to rule and their connection to the divine. This leads to the most practically baffling aspect of the heads, their transportation. The basalt used to carve them did not come from the soft, alluvial soil of the Gulf Coast. The nearest source for this specific type of stone is the Tuxtla Mountains, over 60 miles away from La Venta, through a treacherous landscape of swamps, rivers, and jungle. The Olmec had no wheels, no draft animals like horses or oxen, and no advanced pulley systems. So how did they move a 40-ton boulder 60 miles? The most widely accepted theory is a breathtaking feat of coordinated human labor and ingenuity. Archaeologists believe they likely used a combination of log rollers and rope made from native fibers. Teams of hundreds, perhaps even thousands of workers would have manually hauled these gargantuan stones, inch by painful inch, using a system of levers and rollers. Part of the journey may have involved water transport, floating the massive heads on rafts down rivers that snaked through the region, a slightly easier method than dragging them overland. Regardless of the method, the effort represents an immense investment of social organization, a testament to a ruler's ability to command the labor of an entire population for a project that served to glorify his own image. The context of their placement is just as crucial as their creation. These heads were not randomly placed, they were arranged in lines or groups at the heart of Olmec ceremonial centers, often aligned with precise astronomical orientations. At La Venta, the heads were part of a grand, ritual landscape that included massive earthen pyramids and mosaic pavements made of carefully laid serpentine blocks, buried deep beneath the earth as offerings to the gods. The heads were the public-facing element of this sacred geography, the earthly representatives of the rulers who mediated between the people and the cosmos. Their imposing presence in the plaza would have been the centerpiece of public ceremonies, reinforcing the social and spiritual hierarchy that held Olmec society together. Yet, for all their grandeur and innovation, the Olmec civilization experienced a mysterious decline around 400 BCE. Their great centers, including La Venta, were systematically and ritually defaced. Many of the colossal heads were deliberately damaged, buried, or moved from their original positions. This was not the haphazard destruction of invaders. It suggests internal rebellion, a violent overthrow of the old order. The reasons remain debated, but they likely point to a combination of environmental and social pressures. The Olmec relied on a few key river systems for agriculture and transport. Shifts in these rivers' courses due to siltation or seismic activity could have caused catastrophic crop failure. Furthermore, the immense labor demands of their monumental projects, from moving colossal heads to building giant pyramids, may have placed an unbearable strain on the common people, leading to widespread dissatisfaction and eventual revolt against the ruling class. The civilization that had given Mesoamerica its first writing system, its iconic art style, and its core mythological themes of the jaguar and the word jaguar, seemingly collapsed under its own weight, its greatest monuments toppled and buried by the very people they were meant to impress. The legacy of the Olmec heads, however, did not die with their civilization. Their artistic style, their reverence for massive stone sculpture, and their core religious concepts were adopted and adapted by every major culture that followed, from the Maya to the people of Teotihuacan. The heads themselves were rediscovered by modern archaeologists, often half buried in the jungle, their stoic faces gazing out from the past. They are more than just artifacts, they are the founding monuments of Mesoamerican civilization. They represent the audacious moment when a people first dared to carve their identity into the very bones of the earth, creating a testament to power that, despite being abandoned and damaged, has endured for millennia, forever asking us to remember the names and the faces of the first rulers in the Americas. But the most profound mystery of Carol is not its age, but its peace. In a world we often assume was defined by conflict and conquest, Carol presents a startling anomaly. After over 2 decades of excavation, archaeologists have found no evidence of fortifications, no defensive walls, and no stockpiles of weapons. Incredibly, they have also uncovered no signs of warfare. No mutilated bodies, no burned structures, no depictions of captured prisoners or triumphant warriors. This stands in stark contrast to nearly every other ancient civilization that would follow. So how did this complex society, with its valuable resources and sophisticated culture, maintain its stability for so many centuries without a standing army or apparent need for defense? The answer seems to lie in a revolutionary concept, a society organized around trade and mutual benefit rather than coercion and fear. Carol was the heart of a vast network of specialized communities spread across the Soup Valley and beyond. One settlement focused on fishing, harvesting the rich anchovy from the Pacific. Another community inland grew cotton and cultivated fruits and vegetables. Another produced the fishing nets from that cotton. Carol itself, as the administrative and religious center, likely coordinated this exchange. The fishermen needed cotton for their nets, and the farmers needed fish for protein. This system of reciprocity and economic interdependence, where each community prospered by supplying what the others needed, may have been the glue that held this early civilization together. Their greatest monument, then, might not be a pyramid, but the very idea of peaceful cooperation on a grand scale. This harmony extended to their spiritual life, which appears deeply connected to the music of the earth and sky. Among the most captivating artifacts unearthed at Carol are a collection of musical instruments, including 32 flutes crafted from the bones of pelicans and condors, and 37 cornets made from the bones of llamas or deer. These were not simple toys, they were finely tuned instruments, expertly crafted and decorated with intricate carvings of birds and monkeys. The discovery of these instruments in the main plaza suggests music was central to their ceremonies, a way to commune with the gods and bind the community together in shared experience. Imagine the scene during a solstice celebration, the sun setting in precise alignment with the temples, the air filled with the haunting, resonant sounds of these bone flutes, and the people of Carol gathered in their circular plazas, not in fear of an enemy, but in a collective celebration of the world they had built through collaboration and a profound understanding of their place. Cosmos, and as we move from the grand collaborative peace of Carol, our journey brings us to a place that represents almost its spiritual opposite, a site dedicated not to the harmony of life, but to the veneration of death and the intricate artistry that guides the soul's passage. We travel now to the Oaxaca Valley, to the ancient Zapotec city of Mitla, a place whose very name comes from the Nahuatl word Mictlán, meaning place of the dead. While Monte Albán was the political and military capital of the Zapotec world, Mitla was its profound spiritual counterpart, and its most stunning feature is not its size but its surfaces. the breathtaking mosaic walls that are unlike any other architecture in the ancient Americas. The first impression of these walls is one of mesmerizing, almost hypnotic complexity. Forget simple, stacked stone blocks. The facades of Mittler's palaces are covered in thousands of individually cut, polished stones, each one perfectly fitted against its neighbors without a single drop of mortar to hold them in place. These aren't random patterns, they are elaborate, repeating geometric mosaics known as Greca's intricate fretwork designs that create a dizzying optical effect of steps, zigzags, and interlocking keys. The precision is staggering. Each small stone was painstakingly shaped by hand using harder stones and abrasive sand, then set into a concrete core with such accuracy that the joints are virtually invisible, creating a smooth, seamless tapestry of stone. This technique, known as Xicocoleuqui in Nahuatl, represents the absolute pinnacle of Zapotec architectural artistry, a testament to generations of master craftsmen who dedicated their lives to this sacred stonework. But these were far more than just decorative displays of skill. Every symbol was a profound message, a stone prayer encoding a complex spiritual worldview. The most dominant pattern is the step fret, a design often called the Greek key, though it predates Greek civilization by centuries. For the Zapotec, this was not an abstract shape. Many researchers believe it symbolized the sky, a visual representation of the stepped levels of the cosmos that a soul had to ascend after death. Other interpretations see in the zigzag patterns a representation of the plumed serpent, a deity associated with life, death, and rebirth, or even a stylized depiction of the earth itself with its mountains and valleys. The overwhelming consensus is that the entire visual program of Mittler was a map of the underworld, a sacred text written in stone that guided the spirits of the deceased through the dangerous journey of the afterlife toward their final rest. This profound connection to the underworld defines the entire purpose of Mittler. While Monte Albán was a city of the living, a place of administration, warfare, and public spectacle, Mittler was a city for the dead and the priests who communicated with them. It served as the primary religious center for the cult of the ancestors and the gods of the underworld. The Spanish chroniclers who arrived after the conquest recorded that the Zapotec high priest, known as the Uaja Tau or Great Seer, resided here. This individual was not just a clergyman. He was believed to be a living vessel, the primary interlocutor between the world of the living and the realm of the spirits. It was his duty to interpret the will of the gods, to preside over funeral rites for nobility, and to conduct the ceremonies that ensured the sun would continue to rise and the rains would return. The heart of this spiritual activity was the extraordinary group of the columns. This complex centers on a vast, rectangular courtyard surrounded by long, low buildings, but its most awe-inspiring feature lies within, a narrow, windowless inner chamber known as the Hall of the Columns. To enter this space is to step into the belly of the earth itself. 6 massive, monolithic stone columns, each carved from a single piece of stone and perfectly cylindrical, support a roof that has long since collapsed. These columns once held up the ceiling of the inner sanctum, the most restricted area where the Uaja Tau would perform his most sacred rituals. The walls of this hall are covered from floor to ceiling in the same intricate, dizzying mosaics, creating an overwhelming sensory experience designed to disorient the conscious mind and open a gateway to the spirit world. In the flickering light of torches, the patterns would have seemed to shift and move, inducing a trance-like state perfect for communion with the ancestors. This deep spiritual significance made Mittler a place of such power that even the Spanish conquistadors, who typically raised indigenous temples to build their churches, chose a different path here. They recognized they could not easily dismantle the incredibly precise stonework, and they also understood that to convert the local population, they needed to build directly upon the site's existing spiritual authority. So they did something they did almost nowhere else. They built the Church of San Pablo directly on top of one of Mittler's main platforms, literally using the stones and the sacred energy of the old temple to prop up the new religion. You can stand in the church courtyard today and see the unmistakable Zapotec mosaic patterns peeking out from the foundations, a powerful and poignant symbol of one culture literally superimposed upon another, a silent dialogue between two worlds that continues in the very stones. Now we leave the geometric underworld of Mitla behind and ascend into a realm of mist and mystery. Our journey takes us high into the northern Peruvian Andes, to a place where the clouds cling to the mountainsides and the air grows thin and cool. Here, shrouded in the emerald embrace of the cloud forest, lies a citadel so remote and so formidable that it was known as the Machu Picchu of the north, long before the world ever learned its true name. This is the fortress of Cuelap, a breathtaking stronghold of the enigmatic Chachapoya civilization, a people so fiercely independent they became known as the warriors of the clouds. The approach to Cuelap is an adventure in itself, a journey through a landscape that feels more like a fairy tale than a real place. The cloud forest is a world of dripping moss, towering bromeliads, and orchids that bloom in hidden crevices. Through the swirling mists, the first glimpse of the fortress is nothing short of astonishing. You are not looking at a collection of buildings, but at a single, colossal artificial plateau, a mountain atop a mountain. The perimeter is defined by a gargantuan wall of limestone blocks that soars up to 60 feet in height, a sheer, intimidating barrier that seems to grow organically from the cliff edge. This is not a simple defensive palisade. It is a monumental statement of power, a defiant declaration of presence from a culture determined to carve its identity into the most inaccessible terrain imaginable. Entering the citadel is a deliberate, controlled experience designed to humble any visitor. The main entrance is not a grand gateway, but a narrow, upward-sloping corridor that forces you into single file. This passage, barely wide enough for one person, is a masterclass in defensive architecture. Any attacking force would be funneled into this choke point, exposed and vulnerable to defenders raining down projectiles from the walls high above. Once inside, the scale of the complex unfolds. The entire mountaintop was leveled and enclosed to create a sprawling acropolis covering 15 acres. Within these immense walls, archaeologists have identified the foundations of over 400 circular stone houses, their unique round shapes standing in stark contrast to the rectangular architecture of the Inca who would later pursue them. These dwellings, arranged in clusters, suggest a complex social organization, with elevated platforms that likely served as homes for the elite, overlooking the community below. The sheer effort of construction boggles the mind. The Chachapoya moved an estimated 43 million cubic feet of stone and limestone mortar to build Cuelap, a volume that actually exceeds the amount of material used to construct the Great Pyramid of Giza. And they did it without the wheel, without draft animals, and on a vertiginous mountain ridge far from any easy source of materials. This was not a project undertaken lightly. It speaks to a society under significant pressure, a people who needed a refuge so secure, so impregnable, that they were willing to devote generations of labor to its creation. This leads to the central question: who were they defending against? For a long time, the primary suspect was their eventual conqueror, the expanding Inca Empire. The formidable defenses, the strategic location controlling multiple mountain passes, and the sheer storage capacity for food and water all point to Cuelap being a bastion, a place where the entire Chachapoya population from the surrounding valleys could retreat and withstand a prolonged siege. The Inca, marching north from their capital in Cusco, would have encountered a proud, organized culture that did not submit easily. The fierce resistance of the warriors of the clouds is recorded in Inca oral histories, and Cuelap would have been the ultimate symbol of that defiance. However, some archaeologists propose an intriguing alternative. The fortress may have been built centuries earlier, not against the Inca, but as a defense against rival Chachapoya groups or other hostile neighboring cultures. Its primary role might have been as a ceremonial and administrative center that also offered protection, its military strength serving as a powerful deterrent that kept conflict at bay for centuries. The story of Cahokia, however, does not end with its stones. The surrounding cloud forest cliffs hold secrets even more profound than the fortress itself. The Chachapoya did not bury their dead in the ground. They placed them in sarcophagi or Puran matches that were anchored to sheer cliff faces, or they laid them to rest in elaborate tombs carved into remote caves high above the river valleys. These burials were intended to be inaccessible, to protect the deceased and their grave goods for eternity. For centuries they worked, but in recent decades, archaeologists and explorers have begun to locate these sites, often with the help of local guides. The discoveries have been breathtaking. They have found mummies still shrouded in their finely woven textiles, surrounded by pottery, jewelry, and offerings. The dry, cool, high-altitude air acted as a perfect preservative, leaving the bodies and their artifacts in a remarkable state of preservation. Each new discovery adds a piece to the puzzle of the Chachapoya. The intricate designs on their textiles and pottery reveal a sophisticated artistic tradition. The types of goods buried with the dead, spondylus shells from the distant coast, feathers from the Amazon jungle speak of vast trade networks. And the placement of the tombs themselves shows a deep spiritual belief system connected to the mountains and the sky, a belief that their ancestors should remain close to the condors and the cloud. Cahokia was the beating heart of this culture, a stone fortress for the living, while the cliffs became a silent city of the dead, together telling the story of a resilient, ingenious people who shaped their world against impossible odds, leaving behind a legacy as enduring and mysterious as the mists that forever shroud their mountaintop home. But if the towering walls of Cahokia were built for defense and defiance, our next destination embodies a structure of an entirely different nature, one not of war but of time itself. We journey now from the misty cloud forests of Peru back to the steamy, verdant jungles of Mexico's Gulf Coast, to a city that thrived on ritual, ceremony, and a profound understanding of the cosmos. This is El Tajin, the capital of the Totonac culture, and its most iconic structure is a masterpiece of mathematical precision and symbolic depth, the Pyramid of the Niches. At first glance, the pyramid is a mesmerizing visual puzzle. It rises in 7 tiers, each one smaller than the last, creating a classic pyramidal form. But what makes it utterly unique in all of Mesoamerica are the 365 deep, square recesses carved into its facades. These niches are not random decorations. They are the entire point of the structure, a number so specific it screams intentionality. The immediate and most compelling theory is that this is a massive stone calendar, with each niche representing a single day in the solar year. The pyramid itself becomes a physical manifestation of time, a cosmological map that allowed the Totonac priests to track the passing days, mark the changing seasons, and schedule the sacred ceremonies that were the heartbeat of their society. The play of light and shadow across these niches would have changed dramatically throughout the day and across the seasons, transforming the building into a dynamic, living timepiece. The architectural genius required to achieve this is staggering. The entire structure was engineered with a hidden internal framework of cantilevered slabs. This innovative technique allowed the builders to create the deep, stable niches without compromising the pyramid's structural integrity. Each of the 365 niches was once crowned with a carefully fitted carved block, and many were once painted in vibrant colors, possibly even adorned with small sculptures or offerings. To stand before it is to witness a perfect marriage of art, astronomy, and engineering, a monument that demonstrates a sophisticated grasp of complex mathematical concepts and a deep desire to embed the order of the universe into the very fabric of their city. Yet, to understand El Tajin is to understand that its true spiritual center was not a pyramid but a court. This was a city utterly obsessed with the Mesoamerican ball game, a ritual sport that was far more than mere entertainment. El Tajin boasts 17 ball courts, more than any other site in Mesoamerica. The most famous of these is the South Ball Court, renowned for its 6 stunning carved panels that depict the game in graphic, narrative detail. These carvings show players in heavy protective padding, wielding hip-mounted stones to strike a solid rubber ball. But they also show something far more profound, scenes of ritual sacrifice and divine intervention. In one panel, a player is shown being decapitated, with 7 serpents emerging from his neck, a powerful symbol of renewal and fertility. The ball game was a reenactment of cosmic myths, often involving the journey of the sun through the underworld and its subsequent rebirth. The playing field represented the universe, the ball the sun itself, and the outcome, potentially decided by a single, fateful point, could determine the fate of the community, with the losing team or sometimes the winning captain offering their life to the gods to ensure the sun would rise again and the rains would return. This deep interconnection between the pyramid and the ball game is the key to unlocking El Tajin's worldview. The 365 niches of the pyramid track the solar year, the cycle of life that sustained the people. The ball game, with its life and death stakes, was the ritual mechanism to ensure that cycle continued. They were 2 halves of a single whole. The calendar measured the time, and the sacrifice bought it. The city was a vast, intricate machine designed to maintain the cosmic order through precise ritual action. This makes the city's ultimate fate all the more perplexing. Around the year 1200 CE, at the very height of its power and artistic flourish, El Tajin was suddenly and completely abandoned. There is no evidence of a massive invasion or a single catastrophic event like an earthquake. Instead, the city seems to have been deliberately and peacefully left behind. The prevailing theory points to a slow-burning social and environmental collapse. The region's reliance on slash-and-burn agriculture may have eventually led to severe deforestation and soil exhaustion, undermining the economic base that supported the elite priesthood and the thousands of artisans and laborers. Furthermore, the immense social and psychological weight of their belief system, the constant demand for ritual bloodshed to appease the gods, may have finally become too heavy a burden for the society to bear. Faced with environmental stress and a potential crisis of faith, the people of El Tajin may have simply chosen to walk away from their magnificent stone calendar and silent ball courts, allowing the jungle to reclaim a city whose rituals were no longer enough to hold the world in balance. Venturing high into the southern Ecuadorian Andes, far from the familiar heartland of Peru, we encounter a site that stands as a powerful testament to the reach and adaptability of the Inca Empire. This is in Cahokia, a name meaning Inca Wall, and it is the most significant Inca archaeological complex in all of Ecuador. But to call it purely an Inca site would be to miss its deepest story. In Cahokia is a place of 2 worlds, a brilliant fusion of conqueror and conquered, where the imperial ambition of the Inca met the resilient spirit of the local Cañari people, resulting in a unique architectural marvel centered around a most unusual shape, an ellipse. Before the arrival of the Inca in the late 15th century, this was a sacred place for the Cañari, who knew it as Hatun Cañar. They were a sophisticated culture with their own complex beliefs, particularly centered around the moon, which they revered as a principal deity. They had already established a settlement here with their own temples and dwellings. When the Inca Empire, under the leadership of Emperor Huayna Capac, expanded northward, they encountered the Cañari not as a simple people to be swept aside, but as a formidable culture whose allegiance was valuable. Rather than simply obliterating the existing sacred site, the Inca did what they did so effectively across their empire. They co-opted it. They built their own structures alongside and on top of the Cañari foundations, creating a complex that respectfully, yet firmly, imposed the new imperial order onto the old spiritual landscape. The crown jewel of Ingapirca, and the feature that makes it architecturally unique in the Inca world, is the Temple of the Sun. Unlike the strictly rectangular structures found in Cusco or Machu Picchu, this temple is elliptical. Its graceful, curved wall, constructed with the signature precision of Inca polygonal masonry, wraps around a ceremonial platform. The reason for this unusual shape is a subject of fascinating debate. The most compelling theory is that it was a direct concession to the Cañari. The Inca, as children of the sun god Inti, typically built rectangular temples to honor him. The Cañari, worshippers of the moon, often used circular or elliptical forms in their architecture. The elliptical temple at Ingapirca, therefore, can be seen as a brilliant political and religious compromise, a temple dedicated to the Inca sun god, but built in a shape that would be spiritually acceptable to the moon-worshipping Cañari. It was a stone embodiment of a strategic alliance, designed to integrate the Cañari into the empire without completely erasing their identity. This fusion is visible throughout the site. You can clearly see the difference in construction techniques. The older Cañari walls are built with simpler, rounder river stones set in clay mortar. The Inca additions, however, showcase their legendary mastery. The stones of the Temple of the Sun are finely cut and shaped using harder stones and bronze tools, then painstakingly fitted together without mortar in that characteristic jigsaw puzzle style that has withstood centuries of earthquakes. The seams are so tight that even today you cannot insert a blade between them. This was more than just superior engineering, it was a statement of power and permanence. The Inca were demonstrating their advanced technology and their intention to stay, their divine right to rule literally set in stone against the more rustic work of the previous inhabitants. Yet the true genius of the temple lies in its celestial alignment. Like all great Inca structures, it was a sophisticated astronomical instrument. The main axis of the elliptical temple is carefully oriented so that during the solstices, the rising and setting sun aligns perfectly with specific niches and openings in the structure. On the June solstice, the longest day of the year in the southern hemisphere, the sun would have illuminated the central ceremonial stone in a precise and dramatic way, an event that would have been witnessed by priests and nobility. This alignment served a critical dual purpose. For the Inca, it was a reaffirmation of their sun god's power and a way to mark the sacred turning points of the year for agricultural and ritual calendars. For the conquered Cañari, it was a powerful demonstration of the new order's connection to the cosmos, a visual spectacle designed to inspire awe and legitimize Inca rule by proving their deities commanded the heavens. Beyond the temple, the entire site of Ingapirca functioned as an important administrative, military, and economic center on the imperial road network, the Capac Ñan. There are storehouses called quilcas for holding tribute, barracks for soldiers, and a large communal meeting area. One of the most poignant features is La Cara del Inca, or the face of the Inca, a natural rock formation that, when viewed from a specific angle, strikingly resembles the profile of an Inca ruler looking up at the sky. This natural feature was undoubtedly invested with spiritual significance, further anchoring the Inca presence to the very geology of the land. The story of Ingapirca is ultimately one of brief glory. The Inca control of the region lasted less than a century before the Spanish conquest upheaved the entire continent. The site was abandoned and slowly faded from memory, a remote outpost of a fallen empire. Its enduring power lies in its duality. It is not a pure example of Inca architecture, nor is it a purely Cañari one. It is a dialogue in stone, a rare and beautiful example of cultural synthesis born from conquest. It shows us that even at the farthest edges of their empire, the Inca were not just brutal conquerors. They were pragmatic rulers capable of adapting their own rigid beliefs to incorporate and pacify the cultures they absorbed, creating something new, unique, and hauntingly beautiful under the Andean sky. From the harmonious fusion of cultures at Ingapirca, we now journey to a pivotal moment in Mesoamerican history, a time of great empires fallen and new powers rising from the ashes. In the rugged hills of what is now the Mexican state of Morelos, the city of Xochicalco emerged as a brilliant, strategic, and fiercely independent center of learning and power. Its name fittingly means "in the place of the House of Flowers," but beneath this poetic name lay a city of profound astronomical sophistication and a dark, violent history, best exemplified by its most ingenious structure. An observatory carved not upward toward the sky, but deep down into the living rock. This is not a tower or a pyramid, but a complex of man-made caves, modified with astounding precision to serve as a celestial instrument. The heart of this underground observatory is a vertical shaft, painstakingly drilled through 16 feet of solid limestone bedrock. From the cavern below, this shaft opens to the sky above like a narrow, perfectly straight chimney. For most of the year, sunlight streams down this tube, casting a bright, circular spot of light onto the cavern floor. But on two specific days of the year, around May 14th and July 29th for this latitude, something extraordinary happens. At the precise moment when the sun passes directly overhead, a phenomenon known as the zenith passage, the beam of light transforms. The circular spot shrinks to a tiny, intensely focused point and then, for a few breathtaking minutes, disappears entirely. The shaft is perfectly aligned so that the sun is exactly perpendicular to the opening, its light pouring straight down the tube without casting a shadow on the walls. In the profound darkness of the cave, this event would have been a moment of high drama and deep spiritual significance. For the astronomer priests of Xochicalco, this was not just a light show, it was a critical piece of cosmological data. The zenith passage was a cornerstone of the Mesoamerican calendar system. It marked the point in the year when the sun was at its most powerful, directly overhead with no shadow cast at noon. This event signaled the imminent arrival of the life-giving rains, the time to plant the vital maize crop. The ability to predict this day with absolute accuracy was a source of immense power. It demonstrated a priestly class in perfect harmony with the gods, the rightful intermediaries who could read the sky and ensure the survival of their people. The cave itself, a symbolic portal to the underworld, became the stage for this celestial event, linking the heavens, the earth, and the realm below in a single, observable moment. The rise of Xochicalco to such prominence is deeply connected to the power vacuum left by the collapse of Teotihuacan around 750 AD. As the giant city of the gods fell into silence, a new era of smaller, dynamic city-states competed for influence. Xochicalco, built on a highly defensible series of terraced hills, positioned itself as a cosmopolitan hub of knowledge and commerce. Archaeological evidence reveals it was a true melting pot. Artifacts and artistic styles found at the site show influences from the Maya regions far to the south, from the Zapotec of Oaxaca, and from the cultures of the Gulf Coast. It became a crossroads where ideas, goods, and people converged, and its ruling elite seemed to have actively cultivated this identity, perhaps establishing themselves as the new guardians of the sophisticated knowledge that had once emanated from Teotihuacan. This multicultural identity is set in stone on the city's most famous surface, the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. Unlike the earlier, more abstract depiction at Teotihuacan, the pyramid at Xochicalco features elaborate, beautifully preserved relief carvings that wrap around its base. The central deity is unmistakably Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, but here he is depicted in a style that art historians call international or eclectic. The graceful, curving lines and detailed hieroglyphs show a strong Maya influence. The priests and rulers surrounding the deity are shown seated in cross-legged postures reminiscent of figures from Veracruz. This was a deliberate artistic statement, a way for Xochicalco's rulers to portray their city as the legitimate heir to a pan-Mesoamerican tradition, a new center of wisdom that could speak the cultural language of all the major regions. Yet, this golden age of intellectual and artistic flourishing was not to last. the end of Xochicalco was as sudden and brutal as its rise was brilliant. Sometime around 900 AD, the city experienced a catastrophic fire, but this was not an accidental blaze. The evidence points to a systematic, targeted conflagration. The most intense fires were concentrated in the Acropolis, the area of the palaces and temples where the ruling class lived and worshipped. Buildings were not just burned, they were violently destroyed, their sculptures deliberately defaced and smashed. This pattern indicates a deliberate act of conquest and annihilation, not a random raid. The most compelling theory is that Xochicalco was attacked by a rival power, perhaps the emerging Toltec state centered at Cholula, who saw the prosperous city as a threat. The destruction was so complete, so focused on the symbols of power, that it suggests an uprising may have been involved, where a discontented local population joined with outside forces to overthrow a ruling elite that had perhaps grown too arrogant or oppressive. The ruins of Xochicalco thus stand as a poignant and layered mystery. They represent the brilliant adaptation of a cave into a precise scientific instrument, a testament to human ingenuity in understanding the cosmos. They speak of a vibrant, multicultural society that thrived in a post-collapse world, and they bear the scorch marks of a violent end, a reminder that knowledge and power are fragile things. The observatory cave, where light once revealed the secrets of the heavens, ultimately could not save the city from the darkness of conquest, leaving behind a silent monument to a brief, shining moment when the House of Flowers was one of the brightest lights in Mesoamerica. Yet as we move from the intellectual crossroads of Xochicalco, we find ourselves on the stark northern coast of Peru, where a civilization known for its brutal realism and profound artistry built its own version of the universe in mud brick. Here, beneath the relentless sun near modern-day Trujillo, stand the haunting remnants of the Moch culture, the Huaca del Sol and the Huaca de la Luna, the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon. These are not the elegant, stone-cut structures of the Inca or the Maya. These are colossal mountains of adobe, and their story is one of terrifying gods, calculated violence, and a precarious dance with a volatile climate. The sheer scale of the Huaca del Sol is difficult to grasp. Before it was partially destroyed by Spanish treasure seekers who diverted a river to wash away its sides, it was the largest adobe structure in the ancient Americas. Archaeologists estimate it was composed of over 140 million mud bricks, many of them bearing distinctive marks, suggesting they were produced by different communities as a form of labor tax. This was not just a temple, it was the administrative and political heart of the Moch state, a physical manifestation of the ruler's power to command the labor of thousands. In stark contrast, its companion across the barren plain, the Huaca de la Luna, was the spiritual center, and it is here that the Moch's dark and complex world has been most vividly preserved. While the Huaca del Sol speaks of political power, the Huaca de la Luna reveals the terrifying spiritual engine that drove that power. This pyramid is not a single structure but a series of at least 6, each built directly over the previous one in a process of ritual entombment and renewal. When a significant era ended, perhaps with the death of a ruler or a major climatic cycle, the Moch would not simply add a new layer. They would conduct a great ceremony, seal the existing temple with a layer of mud bricks, and then build an entirely new, larger pyramid right on top of it. It was as if they were preserving each sacred chapter of their history, creating an architectural timeline of their beliefs. It is within these buried layers that archaeologists have made chilling discoveries. The walls of the Huaca de la Luna are adorned with some of the most spectacular and well-preserved polychrome murals in the Americas. The dominant figure is a terrifying, fanged deity known to scholars as the Decapitator. This being part human, part jaguar, and part serpent, is often depicted holding a ceremonial toomey knife in one hand and a severed head in the other. This image is repeated in a mesmerizing, fearsome frieze that would have covered entire walls, leaving no doubt about the primary theme of worship here: sacrifice was the necessary offering to maintain the cosmic order. This art was not mere symbolism, it was a direct reflection of the rituals performed in the plazas below. Excavations in the courtyard between the two main platforms have uncovered the grim physical evidence. Archaeologists found the skeletons of dozens of young men, their bodies showing clear signs of brutal violence, broken bones, cut marks, and in many cases, evidence of dismemberment. The bones were often found mixed with those of combat llamas, and the skeletons were left exposed to the elements, their final resting place being the clay floor of the plaza. Analysis of the victims' remains reveals a fascinating and sinister detail. They were not from the local Moch population. Isotopic testing indicates they were warriors captured from rival valleys or distant communities. This evidence has allowed researchers to reconstruct a likely scenario for the Moch's most important state ritual. It began not with a random raid, but with a highly formalized form of ritual combat. Young warriors from competing Moch polities would meet in a designated arena, perhaps fighting with clubs and shields to capture opponents rather than kill them outright on the battlefield. These captives were then brought back to the Huaca de la Luna as prized possessions. There, in a grand public ceremony, they were ritualistically sacrificed. The method was likely a combination of bludgeoning and throat cutting, their blood offered to the decapitator god to ensure the fertility of the land and the continuation of the sun's journey. This practice, now known as the sacrifice ceremony, is vividly depicted on Moch pottery, which shows elaborately dressed priests receiving goblets of blood from the sacrificed victims. It was a cycle of sanctioned violence that reinforced social hierarchy, demonstrated military prowess, and in the Moch worldview quite literally sustained the world. But the greatest threat to the Moch way of life did not come from rival warriors, it came from the Pacific Ocean. Their entire civilization was built on an intimate yet perilous relationship with a climatic phenomenon, El Niño. In normal years, the cold Humboldt Current brings arid conditions to the coast, and the Moch became masters of hydraulic engineering, building sophisticated canals to irrigate their fields in the desert. They depended on this predictable pattern. However, every few decades or centuries, an El Niño event would occur, reversing the ocean currents and bringing torrential rains to the coast. For the Moch, this was apocalyptic. Their adobe pyramids, designed for a rainless environment, would begin to melt under the downpour. Their canals would be destroyed by floods, and their agricultural fields would be washed away or waterlogged. A severe El Niño could wipe out a generation's worth of infrastructure in a single season. Archaeological evidence suggests that the Moch experienced several major El Niño events during their history. Layers of silt and sand deposited by catastrophic flooding have been found between the construction phases of the Huaca de la Luna. Each time, the Moch demonstrated incredible resilience. They would rebuild their temples, repair their canals, and slowly restore their society. Their response to this climatic chaos was to double down on their rituals, perhaps believing that the gods were angry and required even greater sacrifices to restore balance. This cycle of destruction and rebuilding ultimately could not be sustained forever. Around the year 600 to 700 AD, a perfect storm of crises seems to have overwhelmed them. A particularly severe and prolonged series of El Niño events, evidenced in ice core and sediment records, would have caused repeated crop failures and social chaos. At the same time, there is evidence of internal social unrest. The immense labor demands of the elite, who lived in lavish compounds adorned with murals while the common people faced famine, may have finally sparked revolt. The final blow may have been the rise of a new power, the Wari Empire, expanding from the highlands and disrupting trade routes. The great ceremonial plazas of the Huacas fell silent. The meticulous rituals of combat and sacrifice ceased. The people abandoned their capital, dispersing into smaller communities. The Huaca del Sol and the Huaca de la Luna, those colossal mountains of mud brick, were left to the wind and the occasional rain, standing as stark monuments to a civilization that mastered art, architecture, and warfare, but could not ultimately master the volatile climate upon which their entire world was built. And while the Moche rulers of Peru used sacrifice and ceremony to assert their power, another civilization, far to the north in the lush river valley of western Honduras, was crafting a different kind of legacy, one written in stone. In the ancient Maya city of Capon, power was not just demonstrated through ritual, but through the written word, culminating in a single, breathtaking architectural marvel, the hieroglyphic stairway. Imagine a monumental staircase 63 feet wide with over 70 steps, every single one of them carved with intricate glyphs. This is the longest known pre-Columbian text in the entire Americas, a sprawling stone narrative containing over 2,000 individual glyphs that was designed to be the ultimate, unassailable record of a royal dynasty's divine right to rule. The sheer architectural ambition of the stairway is staggering in its own right. It was built as the central focal point of the city's grand acropolis, leading the eye and the feet of pilgrims and subjects directly up to the most sacred temples and plazas. But this was no ordinary staircase. Its construction was a feat of engineering that unfolded over generations. The core of the structure was built by the 13th ruler of Capon, a king known as Waxaclajun Abacayahuil, or 18 Rabbit, in the early 8th century. He commissioned the first version, but the masterpiece we see today is the result of a later, desperate act of restoration and revision by his successor. The original structure, built with a rubble core, began to collapse under its own immense weight, a potentially catastrophic and deeply embarrassing failure for a monument meant to symbolize eternal power. The 15th ruler, Kayak Yipiaj Chan Kayawil, known as Smoke Shell, undertook a massive reconstruction project. He stabilized the collapsing core and then encased the entire staircase in new, beautifully carved steps, effectively creating a protective shell around the older, damaged text while adding his own prologue and contributions. This act of preservation transformed a potential symbol of dynastic weakness into an even grander testament to the enduring strength of the Capon lineage. For decades after its rediscovery by modern archaeologists, the stairway was a magnificent but silent puzzle. The glyphs were there, beautifully preserved in many sections, but their meaning was locked away, a secret the Maya had kept for over a millennium. The challenge of deciphering them was immense. Early attempts were plagued by a fundamental error. When the stairway was first excavated and reconstructed in the 19th and early 20th centuries, archaeologists, unaware they were dealing with a continuous historical text, mistakenly assumed the glyphs were merely decorative. They placed many of the steps out of order, scrambling the narrative like pages torn from a book and shuffled randomly. For years, scholars tried to read this jumbled text, leading to endless confusion and dead ends. The true breakthrough only came with the greater understanding of the Maya script itself, a decades-long effort by linguists and epigraphers who painstakingly pieced together the grammar and vocabulary of this complex logosyllabic system, where glyphs can represent entire words or individual syllables. Thanks to their work, we can now hear the story the stairway was meant to proclaim. It is not a myth or a religious text, it is a meticulously crafted political document, a dynastic history carved in stone for all eternity. The text begins at the very foundation of Capon's power with the arrival of the city's founder, Kayinish Yaxkayak Mo, or Great Sun Quetzalmacor, in the year 426 AD. The glyphs recount the storied lives, military victories, and sacred rituals of the 16 kings who followed him over the next 4 centuries. It details their ballgame victories, their bloodletting ceremonies to commune with ancestors, and their commissioning of temples and monuments. Each ruler is portrayed as a direct, divinely sanctioned successor in an unbroken chain, their legitimacy reinforced by the glorious deeds of those who came before. This was the ultimate propaganda, a permanent and public record designed to quell any dissent and demonstrate that the current ruler's power was not just a matter of politics, but a preordained cosmic order. Yet the story the stairway tells is also a story of crisis, and its final chapters reveal a fascinating layer of political spin. The staircase's principal builder, Smoke Shell, came to the throne during a period of severe decline for Capan. His father, the illustrious but ultimately tragic Waxaclajun Abakayawil, had been captured and executed by a rival city, Kurigar, a catastrophic event that shattered Capan's military prestige and likely disrupted its economy. Smoke Shell's reign was therefore one of recovery, not expansion. The hieroglyphic stairway was his masterstroke, his way of responding to this crisis. By creating this immense, permanent record of dynastic glory, he was effectively rewriting the recent, painful history. He emphasized the deep, ancient roots of his family's power, focusing attention on the legendary founders and the long line of successful kings, thereby overshadowing his father's humiliating defeat. The stairway was a powerful act of political restoration, using the past to secure a fragile present and legitimize a future for his struggling dynasty. It stands as a timeless lesson in how history, especially history written in stone by the victors, is often the most powerful tool a ruler has to shape the world. Emerging from the dense jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula, a stark and magnificent silhouette pierces the horizon, a symbol of ancient genius that has captivated the world. This is El Castillo, also known as the Temple of Cuculcan, the breathtaking centerpiece of the great Maya city of Chichen Itza. While our journey has taken us to many pyramids, this structure stands apart, not just as a temple, but as a masterfully engineered cosmic clock, an acoustic marvel, and a powerful testament to a city transformed by conquest and synthesis. Its iconic stepped form, rising 98 feet into the sky, is far more than a simple monument. It is a mathematical poem written in stone, each element meticulously calculated to interact with the forces of nature. The most famous of its secrets is written in the very geometry of its ascent. The pyramid is composed of a series of 9 stepped terraces, divided by a staircase on each of its 4 sides. Each staircase has 91 steps. If you multiply 91 by 4, you get 364. Add the one final step to the top platform, and you arrive at 365, a precise representation of the solar year. This alignment with the earthly calendar is just the beginning. The pyramid's orientation and design create one of the most spectacular astronomical events in the ancient world. On the spring and autumn equinoxes, as the sun sets, a fascinating interplay of light and shadow occurs. The corner of the stepped terraces casts a series of triangular shadows down the northern staircase. These shadows connect with massive stone serpent heads at the base, creating the undulating, illusionary body of a giant serpent slithering down from the heavens to the earth. This is Cuculcan, the feathered serpent deity, descending to bless the land. This was not a lucky accident. It was a deliberate, awe-inspiring demonstration of the Mayas' profound understanding of solar cycles, geometry, and their desire to manifest their gods in the physical world for all to see. But the wonders of El Castillo extend beyond the visual to the auditory. Stand at the base of the pyramid and clap your hands once. Instead of a flat echo, you will hear a distinct, chirping sound remarkably similar to the call of the sacred Quetzal bird. This acoustic phenomenon is no coincidence. Researchers believe the sound is created by the interaction of the sound waves with the steep, stepped angles of the staircase. The timing of the echoes as the sound bounces off each step produces this specific frequency. In the context of Maya ritual, this would have been profoundly significant. The Quetzal bird, with its brilliant green plumage, was considered a divine messenger, a creature closely associated with the gods and the spirit world. For a priest standing on the pyramid during a ceremony, a clap or the beat of a drum would have been transformed into the voice of a sacred bird, a supernatural confirmation that the rituals were being heard in the celestial realm. It was another layer of sensory engineering, using architecture to blur the line between the human and the divine. This fusion of Maya astronomical precision with a new, more militaristic spiritual fervor points to a pivotal chapter in Chichen Itza's history. The city's origins are purely Maya, but around the 10th century, its character dramatically changed. Archaeological and artistic evidence strongly suggests an influx of people from the central Mexican plateau, likely Toltecs, under the leadership of a legendary figure known as Kukulkan, a man who may have taken the name of the god he championed. This was not necessarily a violent invasion, but more of a cultural takeover that profoundly influenced the city's art, architecture, and practices. The feathered serpent cult, while present in earlier Maya culture, became the dominant state religion. The warrior imagery seen elsewhere at Chichen Itza, with its columns carved as rattlesnakes and depictions of eagles and jaguars devouring human hearts, is strikingly similar to the art of the Toltec capital, Cholula. El Castillo itself, built during this period, is the ultimate symbol of this synthesis, a Maya pyramid in form, dedicated to a pan-Mesoamerican deity and reflecting a new, more centralized and militaristic political order. The spiritual life of Chichen Itza, however, had a darker, more terrifying dimension intimately connected to the landscape itself. Just a short walk from El Castillo lies the sacred cenote, a massive natural sinkhole filled with deep, greenish water. For the Maya, cenotes were not just water sources, they were portals to the underworld known as Xibalba and the dwelling place of the rain god Choc. The sacred cenote was the most important of these portals. For centuries, it was a site of pilgrimage and sacrifice. The Spanish bishop Diego de Landa, drawing on Maya accounts, wrote of rituals where valuable objects and sometimes people were thrown into the cenote as offerings to appease the gods. For a long time, this was considered a myth, but in the early 20th century, dredging operations confirmed the grim truth. The murky depths yielded a treasure trove of ritual offerings, exquisite gold artifacts, jade from Guatemala, turquoise from the American Southwest, and beautifully carved incense burners. More hauntingly, they also recovered human remains, the bones of men, women, and children. While the scale of human sacrifice was likely exaggerated by the Spanish, the evidence is clear that the cenote was a place of profound spiritual significance where the ultimate offering was made in times of drought or crisis, a desperate plea for life sent directly into the mouth of the underworld. El Castillo, the brilliant solar calendar, and the sacred cenote, the dark portal to the world below, represent the two poles of the Maya cosmos at Chichen Itza, the ordered, predictable heavens and the chaotic, vital power of the earth, both essential for the survival of the city and the balance of the world. But if the intricate stonework of the Inca at sites like in Cahokia demonstrated their mastery of joining blocks, our next destination reveals a place where their ambition reached almost superhuman proportions, a fortress where the very mountainside was reshaped into a bastion of both royal power and desperate defiance. We journey now to the sacred valley of Peru, to the living Inca town of Ollantaytambo, where the sheer scale of the terraces and the haunting presence of abandoned monoliths tell a story of engineering genius, spiritual significance, and a pivotal, bloody moment in the fight against conquest. The first sight of the archaeological complex is overwhelming. The town itself is a preserved relic of Inca urban planning, with narrow cobblestone canals still running alongside original stone houses. But looming above it, dwarfing everything in sight, is a series of colossal agricultural terraces. These are not the simple, stacked stone walls you might see elsewhere. These are monumental retaining walls, some standing over 50 feet tall, that transform the steep mountainside into a series of vast, level platforms. Imagine the workforce required to move the millions of tons of earth and stone to create these flat plains on a near-vertical slope. This was more than just farming, it was a radical re-engineering of the landscape. The terraces created microclimates, allowing the Inca to experiment with crops at different altitudes. and their sheer size served as a powerful, visible statement of the state's ability to command nature itself. They were the foundation, both literally and figuratively, for the royal estate that stood atop them. Ascending these terraces, your attention is seized by the most baffling feature of Ollantaytambo, the Temple Hill. At the summit, a sheer wall of 6 enormous pink granite blocks stands as a testament to an unfinished vision. These stones are staggering, each one weighing well over 50 tons. They are fitted together with the characteristic Inca precision, but they are alone, a fragment of what was clearly intended to be a massive temple. Behind them, scattered across the mountainside like a giant's abandoned toys, are other colossal stones, some weighing more than 150 tons. These are the famous tired stones, blocks that were in the process of being dragged from a quarry when the work was abruptly halted. The mystery of their transport is one of the great puzzles of Inca engineering. The quarry for this distinctive pink porphyry stone was located on the opposite side of the valley, high on a mountain called Cachicota, several miles away and across the turbulent Urubamba River. How did they move these titans? The prevailing theory involves an incredible feat of coordination. The Inca had no wheels or draft animals. They likely used an army of thousands of laborers. The stones would have been pried from the quarry using bronze bars and stone hammers. To get them down the mountain, they probably constructed massive earthen ramps and used ropes to control their descent. To cross the river, they may have diverted its flow temporarily or built strong bridges. The final ascent up to the temple site on the other side would have required an immense system of log rollers, levers, and ropes, with teams pulling in unison, their efforts directed by overseers using conch shell trumpets. The logistical complexity is mind-boggling, a project that would have required the full administrative power of the Inca state. Some indigenous legends even speak of a magical plant that could soften stone, making it easier to work, a poetic explanation for an achievement that still feels barely possible. This grand construction was initiated by the Inca Emperor Pachacuti in the 15th century as a luxurious royal estate, a private retreat and administrative center that showcased his power and connection to the gods. The precise function of the unfinished temple remains a subject of debate. Some scholars believe it was dedicated to Viracocha, the creator god, while others argue it was for Inti, the sun god. The alignment of the site is precise. During the winter solstice, the sun rises directly through a notch in the mountains as seen from the temple platform, bathing the stones in dramatic light. Ollantaytambo was clearly a place of immense spiritual importance, blending the emperor's earthly authority with his divine mandate. But the site's most dramatic chapter came not during its construction, but during its defense. In the 1530s, after the Spanish had captured the Inca Emperor Atahualpa and seized the capital of Cusco, a rebellion was led by Atahualpa's brother, Manco Inca. Manco initially cooperated with the Spanish, but soon realized their intent was total domination. He made Ollantaytambo his stronghold and headquarters for the Great Inca Rebellion. The Spanish, led by Hernando Pizarro, marched on the fortress, confident of an easy victory against what they considered primitive warriors. What followed was a brilliant demonstration of Inca military strategy. Manco Inca's forces used the site's natural and engineered defenses to perfection. From the high terraces, they rained down a hail of arrows, sling stones, and spears upon the Spanish cavalry confined in the valley below. But their masterstroke was hydrological warfare. The Inca, masters of water engineering, had constructed intricate canals that channeled water from the high mountains. As the Spanish forces advanced, the Inca opened floodgates, releasing a torrent of water down the steep valley approaches. The narrow pathways transformed into raging rapids, washing away the Spanish attack and bogging down their horses in mud. The conquistadors, clad in heavy armor and unable to maneuver, were sitting ducks for the Inca soldiers attacking from above. For the first and one of the only times during the conquest, a Spanish army was decisively defeated and forced into a humiliating retreat. Ollantaytambo became a symbol of fierce, effective resistance. The victory, however, was short-lived. The Spanish regrouped, called for reinforcements, and changed their tactics. Realizing he could not hold Ollantaytambo against a prolonged siege with a larger, better-prepared force, Manco Inca made the strategic decision to abandon the fortress. He and his followers retreated deep into the jungle, eventually establishing a remote neo-Inca state at Vilcabamba. The great stones of the temple were left where they lay, the grand project forever frozen in time. Ollantaytambo thus stands as a complex monument, a showcase of unparalleled engineering ambition, a sacred royal estate, and the site of a fleeting but powerful victory that proved the Inca spirit was not so easily broken, even as their empire crumbled around them. Deep within the dense, untouched jungles of the Mexican state of Campeche, far from the well-trodden tourist paths, lies a city whose very name evokes its former power, Calakmul, the city of the two adjacent pyramids. For centuries, this metropolis was completely reclaimed by the wilderness, its immense structures hidden beneath a canopy so thick that its true scale was a mystery. Unlike coastal cities or those on open plains, Calakmul's story is one of survival in an unforgiving environment, a testament to Maya ingenuity in harnessing the elements, and the stage for one of the most epic and prolonged rivalries in ancient American history. The first challenge for Calakmul's inhabitants was not building grandeur, but simply staying alive. The region has no surface rivers or lakes for most of the year. Water is a precious commodity that vanishes into the porous limestone bedrock. To support a population that may have exceeded 50,000 people at its peak, the city's engineers executed a breathtaking feat of urban planning. They transformed the entire cityscape into a massive water collection system. The great plazas, the courtyards, and the causeways were all carefully paved and sloped, channeling every drop of rainwater during the seasonal torrents into a network of immense reservoirs known as aguadas. These were not simple ponds, they were meticulously engineered basins, some lined with clay to prevent seepage, that could hold millions of gallons of water. This complex hydraulic system was the lifeblood of Calakmul, allowing it to thrive deep in the heart of the jungle where other settlements would have perished. The city's survival depended on this mastery of water, turning the plaza floors into a catchment area that fed the vast population through the long, dry months. Rising above this engineered landscape were the two great pyramids that gave the city its name. These structures, simply known as Structure 1 and Structure 2, are monumental. Structure 2 is one of the largest Maya pyramids ever built, a massive bulk of stone towering over 130 feet high. From its summit, on a rare clear day, you could allegedly see the towering roof comb of their great rival's main temple, the city of Tikal, over 20 miles away. This geographical fact is the key to understanding Calakmul's history. For over a century, the Maya world was dominated by a Cold War between two superpowers, a struggle often called the Star Wars by epigraphers because of the celestial imagery used in their propaganda. On one side was Tikal, a long-standing center of power and commerce. On the other was the rising Snake Kingdom, the Empire of Khan, whose capital was Calakmul. The rulers of Calakmul were master politicians. Rather than engaging Tikal in direct, head-on conflict for decades, they pursued a strategy of encirclement. Through shrewd alliances, political marriages, and military pressure, they cultivated a network of vassal states that surrounded Tikal, effectively cutting it off from trade routes and allies. The history of this epic struggle has been painstakingly reconstructed from the hundreds of stelae tall, carved stone monuments erected throughout the city. These stelae are the stone archives of Calakmul's kings. They depict rulers in elaborate feathered headdresses, standing triumphantly over bound captives and recording important dates in the long count calendar. One of the most famous rulers, Uknum Siechin Roman II, also known as Uknum the Great, ruled for over 50 years and oversaw the zenith of Calakmul's power. a period where the Snake Kingdom's influence stretched across the Maya lowlands. The rivalry culminated in a decisive event in the year 662 AD, when a Calakmul-led alliance managed to defeat and capture the king of Tikal. This was a humiliating blow for Tikal, which entered a period of decline. For a time, it seemed Calakmul was the undisputed hegemon of the Maya world. Yet, this victory contained the seeds of its own downfall. The constant warfare, the resources poured into maintaining a far-flung alliance network, and the grandiose building projects to glorify its kings placed an immense strain on Calakmul's society and environment. The very jungle that had protected it began to turn against it. The decline of Calakmul, and indeed of the entire classic Maya civilization, was not caused by a single enemy, but by a perfect storm of interconnected crises. Decades of intense warfare destabilized the region's political and economic systems. At the same time, paleoclimatologists studying sediment cores from nearby lakes have uncovered compelling evidence of a series of severe, multi-decade droughts that struck the region between the 8th and 9th centuries. For a city like Calakmul, whose existence was a delicate balancing act of water management, these droughts would have been catastrophic. The great reservoirs would have dried up, leading to crop failure, famine, and social chaos. The people would have lost faith in their rulers, the divine kings who were supposed to maintain the cosmic balance and ensure the arrival of the rains. The end was not sudden, but a slow, painful unraveling. The carving of royal stelae, the great chronicles of the Snake dynasty, ceased around the early 9th century. The royal palace was abandoned. The population dwindled as people migrated away in search of reliable water sources. The meticulous water channels silted up, and the jungle, which had been held at bay for centuries by human effort, began its patient, inexorable reconquest. The grand plazas fell silent, and the towering pyramids became mere hills cloaked in green, their stories waiting for centuries to be read again in the weathered stone. Calakmul's story is a powerful lesson in the fragility of even the most powerful civilizations, showing how the very strategies that lead to imperial greatness, ambition, expansion, and dominance can, when combined with environmental change, lead to a collapse as monumental as the pyramids themselves. Now we travel far to the north, to a bend in the Mississippi River in what is now the state of Louisiana. Here, over 3,000 years ago, a society of hunter-gatherers accomplished something that seems to defy all logic. They constructed one of the largest and most complex earthworks in the entire Western Hemisphere, a sprawling ceremonial landscape known today as Poverty Point. This is not the work of a settled agricultural empire like the Maya or the Inca. This was built by people who lived by hunting, fishing, and gathering wild plants, a nomadic way of life we typically associate with small, mobile bands. Yet at Poverty Point, they moved an almost unimaginable volume of earth, constructing a series of 6 concentric, C-shaped ridges towering over the flat river plain, with a massive ceremonial mound at their center. The scale is breathtaking. The entire complex covers an area of over 400 acres. The main earthworks form a giant semicircle with the open side facing towards the river. Each concentric ridge stands several feet high, and the outermost ones are over 3/4 of a mile from end to end. Just to the west of this grand design sits Mound A, often called the Bird Mound for its distinct avian shape when viewed from above. This earthwork is a true colossus, rising 70 feet high and stretching over 700 feet in length. To put that in perspective, the base of Mound A is larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza's. The incredible fact is that all of this was built by hand, basket load by basket load, over a remarkably short period, perhaps just a few hundred years, by a society that did not farm, had no domesticated animals for labor, and did not use the wheel. The immediate, baffling question is how they achieved this and why. The how involves a staggering communal effort. Archaeologists estimate that over 1 million cubic meters of soil were moved to create the ridges and mounds. That is the equivalent of over 35 million basket loads, each weighing around 50 pounds. This was not the work of a few dozen people. It required the coordinated labor of thousands, a level of social organization that historians once believed was impossible for hunter-gatherers. They must have had a sophisticated system of leadership, a shared belief system powerful enough to motivate such a Herculean task, and a deep knowledge of engineering to ensure these massive earthworks remained stable for millennia. This leads to the why. What was the purpose of this colossal undertaking? The site's layout provides compelling clues. It is not a random arrangement. The central plaza formed by the C-shaped ridges is perfectly level, a carefully engineered flat space that could have held thousands of people for communal gatherings and rituals. Furthermore, the entire complex shows a precise understanding of celestial movements. The central axis of the semicircular ridges is aligned to the sunset on the summer solstice. Specific points on the ridges also mark the equinox sunsets. This was not just a village, it was a giant earthen calendar and a ceremonial center, a place where the community gathered to mark the passing of the seasons, a cycle as critical to hunter-gatherers tracking animal migrations and plant cycles as it was to farmers. The true extent of Poverty Point's influence is revealed not in its earth, but in the objects found within it. Excavations have uncovered an astonishing array of artifacts made from materials sourced from hundreds, even thousands of miles away. There are beautifully crafted spear points and tools made from chert from the Ohio and Tennessee River valleys. There are polished stone vessels carved from soapstone that originated in the Appalachian Mountains of Alabama and Georgia. Most remarkably, there are tiny, polished beads and decorative objects made from copper that could only have come from the Great Lakes region over 1,000 miles away. This was not the result of a few chance encounters. It represents a vast, well-established trade network. Poverty Point was a major hub, a destination for pilgrims and traders from across eastern North America. People would have journeyed here, bringing their most valuable materials as offerings or for trade, likely during the great seasonal gatherings. In return, they might have received finely made goods produced by Poverty Point's master artisans, such as tiny, baked clay objects of various shapes known as Poverty Point objects. These mysterious clay pieces, once thought to be cooking stones, may have served as tokens of exchange or symbols of participation in the rituals, a tangible connection to the power and prestige of this extraordinary place. The society that built Poverty Point remains enigmatic. They left behind no written records, and we do not know what they called themselves. The name Poverty Point comes from a 19th century plantation that was later established on the land, an ironic label for a place that represented such immense wealth and social cohesion. Their achievement forces us to rethink our assumptions about human history. It proves that monumental architecture and complex social organization are not exclusive to agricultural societies. A strong shared ideology and a deep connection to the land and sky can be just as powerful a motivator as the need to store surplus grain. For reasons still unknown, this vibrant hub was abandoned around 1100 BC. The great gatherings ceased, the trade networks shifted, and the forest slowly reclaimed the earthworks. But the ridges and mounds remain, a silent, monumental challenge to our understanding of ancient America, a testament to the power of a collective vision that arose not from fields of corn, but from the rich bounty of the wild. And so our journey across the Americas comes to a close, from the colossal pyramid hidden beneath a Mexican hill to the star-aligned citadel of the Cloud Warriors. We have stood in the shadow of stones that whisper of empires and walked the pathways of cities that mastered time itself. What this incredible tour reveals is a truth far more profound than any single mystery. The ancient Americas were not a barren stage waiting for history to begin, but a vibrant, interconnected tapestry of human genius. Each of these 25 structures, in its own unique way, showcases a breathtaking blend of advanced engineering, precise astronomical knowledge, and a deep, spiritual relationship with the cosmos. The builders of Carol demonstrated that monumental ambition could flourish in peace, while the architects of Chavín de Huántar understood the power of psychology, using sound and space to orchestrate transcendental experiences. Yet for all we have uncovered, the silence that surrounds these places is perhaps their most powerful feature. It invites us to wonder. What final crisis compelled the people of Cahokia to simply walk away from their mighty earthworks? What desperate prayer was uttered before a sacrifice was made at the sacred cenote of Chichen Itza? What song was last played on the bone flutes of Carol before the city was consumed by the desert sands? The fates of these builders are as varied as their creations, lost to climate change, social upheaval, conquest, or perhaps a slow fading of faith. Their stories are unfinished, and that is what keeps the flame of curiosity burning. We are left with a legacy not of answers but of awe, a reminder that our ancestors were not primitive but profoundly sophisticated, their lives woven into the very fabric of the land and sky in ways we are only beginning to comprehend. These bizarre and beautiful structures are enduring monuments to the human spirit's relentless drive to create, to understand, and to reach for the divine. Now we turn the question over to you. Which of these ancient wonders left you the most captivated? Was it the terrifying psychological labyrinth of Chavín de Huántar, or the peaceful cooperative mystery of Carol? Perhaps the sheer, defiant scale of Monk's Mound at Cahokia, or the intricate, unknowable calendar of the Pyramid of the Niches at El Tajin. Let us know in the comments below which structure you would most want to visit and why. Your thoughts are what make this exploration so fascinating. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because our channel is dedicated to unearthing history's greatest mysteries, one astonishing discovery at a time. Thank you for watching, and until our next adventure.